Hey, welcome everyone to the ArchiCAD User Monthly Webinar and the ArchiCAD Coaching Program combined session. This is a coaching clinic in which you get to ask questions and I get to try to answer them. Let me know that you can hear me and see the screen, and tell us where you're calling in from. So if you're, you can use the GoToWebinar chat area and just fill that in. And if you are one of the coaching program members, you can use Slack as well. Now, I see Stan said Eric sound, and then Henry said all good. All right, all right, it looks like Stan, you might have a local issue because everybody else is saying it. All right, so welcome to Tom, Michael from Syracuse, Ian from Scotland, Emil from Mollymook, Australia. All right. Jerry Sperling, nice to see you. Maria or Mariah, Joel, Todd, Montreal, Nicholas. All right, James Hill, you've lost the Slack channel, you remember. All right, well, we'll help you out with that. Maybe not during today's session, but I'll make sure you get back in there. And Maria, or Mariah, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, from France. And Conrado from San Mateo, my neighbor. Zlatko from Sydney, Australia. All right, so welcome everybody. Today has been a challenging day because my web server went ballistic a few hours ago. So I started getting notices from people saying, you know, there's a warning on your site or it's not coming up. So I've been dealing with just trying to get my websites going. You know, that includes the ArchiCAD stuff like archicadtraining.com and bobrow.com, but also the for my other business, which is helping architects with marketing with the Architect Marketing Institute, which I'm a partner in. The member website stopped working and started giving some warnings. So I'm having website security service that I regularly use, look at it, as well as the web server hosting company. And well, hopefully it'll all get resolved later today. But if you've been having any problems accessing any of the member resources like archicadtraining.com, then at least you know that it's not just you. So I'm taking a breath here. I do want to introduce you to a special guest I have. This is Simone, who is a 5-month-old, almost 6 months old puppy, Brussels Griffon, and she's just very lively, and you know, she looks sort of like an Ewok or like Oscar the Grouch. Anyway, she's accompanying me today. And so, I haven't had a chance to organize all the questions that were sent in, but we'll, yeah, Roger says she's getting big. Yeah, she's over 10 pounds. We were told that she'd be 9 pounds, but looks like she's a big girl, you know, so to speak. All right. So I haven't had a chance to organize everything, in part because I was focused on the fire that I had to put out. But let me bring up on screen my support portal where I can look at the questions that have come in. Let me just refresh it so I have it all here. And so I know that Jamshed sent me something. Cinda has sent me something in the past that she wanted me to talk about. Roger had a general question. We could start with that. That would be interesting. Robin, let's see if some of you sent in some files after I requested it. I'm not sure. Eric Milberger, I think you said you sent me something. So let's just see who's on the call. At this point, we've got 65 people, it says, on the call, and I'll be able to at least start with questions for people who are on the line. So I know, Roger, you are on the line there. Let me open up a project that I use a lot for these sort of things, which is the sample project for master template. And because it has a lot built into it, and it's something I'm very familiar in terms of using it for demonstrations. So I will bring that up. This other image that we're seeing here actually relates to one of the questions that came in. And so if that person, I have to see which one it is. If that person is on, then we can also deal with that. I think that might have been Robin. Yeah, Robin Wilson. Is Robin Wilson on? Not yet. So I'll hold on to that. So let's take a look at Roger East, your general question here. And I guess let me open it up so we can see your question. And I'll open up your line, Roger, here. All right, Roger, your line is open. If you click on the microphone icon button, we should be able to hear you. So,
you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Perfect. So tell everybody.
I have 2 puppies in the background, so hopefully they won't bark.
Okay. Tell everybody where you're located, and just briefly, I know we've known each other for a long time. When did you get started with ArchiCAD?
Oh, Eric, I don't even remember. It's a long time ago.
In the 90s.
In the 90s, yeah. And then I found people that I could just delegate all of the work to, and which was great. But now I'm realizing I need to learn the program. So
Okay.
I'm really good with 2D, but as you can tell from my question, there's just a lot of functionality that I avoid because I don't want to screw anything up. So
Right.
I'm really trying to become a better user.
Okay, well, glad that you're continuing to study and refine your knowledge even after 20 odd years. And of course, ArchiCAD over the years introduces new workflow, new interface elements. And yeah, you can be, it's natural that you, at least for a while, are going to find them unfamiliar and maybe something that you don't want to mess with. So let's talk about what we're looking at here. So this is at the bottom row of tabs. Now, some of you, of course, will know exactly what this is about and could answer the question just as well as myself. But for those of you who are less familiar or sort of know what it does, but don't really know as much as you'd like, then the next 5 or 10 minutes will be for you. What do we have down here? We have a set of interface elements that are common regardless of whether we're in a plan or we're in what do you call it, a layout, or let's say they are similar. You can see in a layout, some of these things are gray. If we're in 3D, I think in 3D, there's also going to be some other things that are gray. So the interface changes depending upon what context you're in. Now, in the bottom left area, there's some navigation things. So being able to say, click and zoom in, to an area. So that's a little plus sign, or click here to fit in window. So these are some navigation tools and some ability to switch your scale. So for example, 100%, you can see how it got bigger, and I can have saved views as well. Now, if you want to rotate your view, you can set the orientation. Let me just zoom out a little bit. If part of the building was on a 45-degree angle or something like that, you could say, I'd like to set it graphically. It says enter rotation center point, and maybe I click on 2 points and then rotate them. Now, more often you would say, take something that's off the angle and rotate it to be square. But this allows me to draw, of course, with the X and Y related to what's on screen.
Yeah, and Eric, I have a new project that I'm going to need this, and I don't know exactly what the angle is, so I can do this manually. I'm assuming, but I would need something in the background. I actually have I have a site survey, but it doesn't have. Well, it would have. Yeah, it's going to have one common property line that I could probably use to align with.
Okay, so let's assume that this was your site here, just to give you, something visually on screen. What I can do is I can click to say set this orientation. Go, let's say that you were on the site and you were going to a property boundary line that you wanted to make square. So you'd go to the edge, a corner and another point along that one, and then you'd rotate it. In this case, it's going to take it back to the 0 because obviously this was square. You'll see after I complete that it now says 0. So you will see degrees in here.
Okay.
And you can also, you can go back and forth between, let's say, 0 and the 45. So you can have more than one reference there. So if I jump to 45, you can see how it instantly switches. If I take it back to 0. And of course, it has some built-in ones that are on different, just rotated 90 degrees or et cetera.
Now, can I, once I find the angle, can I set that as a favorite, or it's going to be an odd angle? It's not going to be 45 degrees.
Yes, of course. So yes, you can, it'll always appear as one of the recently used angles
Okay.
for this project, so if you open up another project, it won't be there. Another thing is that there are saved zooms. So this 63% here is also a concept of saving the current zoom. So let's just, first of all, say I'm going to zoom in on a particular area, let's say like the kitchen here. And I'd say that I'd like to save the current zoom. Now the kitchen only relates to the first floor. Other things might relate to all stories, like the front facade of the building or something like that. But here I'll just call it kitchen. Now, if I go out to fit in window and then go back in here, I can jump to the kitchen view. All right. Now this can also have a rotation. So let's just say that I wanted this at even just at 90 degrees, just to make it a little bit easier to work on for certain types of kitchen layouts. Let me go and rotate this graphically and say that this line here, I'm going to take it around to 90. I want to make sure that I'm really on a good angle. You can see the tracker comes up, and I make sure that I'm really snapping there.
Right.
So now let me go and after it sort of thinks about it, whoops, let me just have to move a little bit more slowly. For some reason, it took a little bit more time to register, but let's say that this is a zoom where I'll just zoom in even more on, this part of the kitchen here. And so I'm going to go and say save this view as rotated kitchen enlarged plan. Okay, so now I can go between this one, the regular kitchen one that I had here, the fit-in window, and I can go back to the rotated kitchen enlarged plan where it's got that.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Now, by the way, if I do fit-in window now, you can see I am still rotated, into this orientation. So this is the fit-in window will keep the orientation to 270 in this case. So these are some variations of views. You can also use the view map here to save views that have particular zooms included. I don't want to try to go into all the different ways to use it, but you'd ask for lower.
That's why I said generally, because it's a big topic. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, so let me go and just we'll put it back to the kitchen view, which puts me back at the 0 orientation, and then fit in window, just so we see, let's say what I'm used to seeing here. Now the rest of the tabs down here, well, there's a scale factor, and right now we're at 1/4 inch to a foot. And as most of you know, if you were to make this at 1/2 inch to a foot, everything would get twice as big, but the text and other paper elements would not change. So if I change it to 1/2 inch, look what happens to the marker bubbles and the window and door markers here and the grid markers. They will stay the same size on screen, but the building will get twice as big. So if I scroll over here, this is the same size on screen because it would print out the same size. Of course, it's much tinier compared to the, what do you call it, the building elements. So let me put it back to the 1/4 inch and it might be clearer. This is
Yeah.
still the same size on screen, but the building is smaller. And of course, we can go to something else. Now, this is different than zooming in and out. This is changing the way that paper elements relate to building elements. Now, I
Yeah,
can.
and Eric, not to interrupt here, but I run into that all the time, and that was going to be a future question. How do you actually resolve that? Because I have a set of documents that I have 3 different scales. I have 16th, 1/8, and 1/4. And
Yep.
I have not figured out how to have each layout that would accommodate the appropriate text size.
Okay. So what started as just something that I would just explain what each of these parts is getting into a little bit more intricate question about managing a project with different drawings, of course, different scales in this case is one part of it. Of course, different orientations can be included. So let's just look at the view map and the definitions of views. So for example, when I go to first floor plan here, which is what I'm on, I'm not going to see any change because what do you call it? This is what I'm in right now at the 1/4 inch scale. Now, do I have an enlarged plan? Let's see. Well, let me just create an enlarged plan here. So I'm going to go now and say, let's take it at the 1/2 inch. All right, here, and I'm going to zoom in on this kitchen area here. Now, at an enlarged scale, we have more space to make notes because the text is further apart. The text is quite readable here. If I just click on this and go to 100%, this is at least a simulation on my screen of what it would print out at. Now I'm going to go and save this as a new view. So I say save current view and give it a name. We'll say enlarged kitchen plan. Okay. Now it pops into the view map below whatever I've got currently selected. This is a clone folder, so it has all the stories, and this becomes a separate individual view of this story with a certain zoom. Now, when we have a view, we have a possibility of it having a zoomed area, like we saw. If you click ignore zoom and rotation, then although it'll have this information, it'll just leave you wherever you were, like you might be looking at a different part of the building. But if you have this unchecked, then it will automatically go to this zoomed area, much like I did with the saved zoom earlier. Now, what I want to point out is I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Actually, I'll just do fit in window here. So this is at 1/2 inch to a foot. Notice how everything is small, relatively small here. If I go to this first floor plan here, you see how it changed to bigger. That's because these would print out on paper the same size, but the building would be smaller. So ultimately, without trying to get into too much, and I can help you more on this in the coaching program, for each type of drawing that you want to create, let's say it's in a large kitchen plan, let's say it's a building floor plan, let's say it's a site plan, and the site, is maybe pretty big. Each one of them will have a scale that you'd prefer to work with. Each one of them will have certain layers that are appropriate. On a site plan, you're going to turn off most of the interior stuff. On an interior kitchen, large kitchen, you're going to have extra notes and things that you don't show necessarily on the main full floor plan. So you have scale, you have layers, you may have model view options. So for example, as we know, when you have a ceiling plan and we do this is going to look much the same, except we've got different ways of representing the windows and doors. And we're seeing in this case some information about the lighting on the ceiling, as well as some notes that are on that layer. So this, when we change here, we're changing the layer combination. So the reflected ceiling plan layer combination, which turns on some information like I guess slab ceiling is turned on, so we could see coffered ceilings or other ceiling details. You know, there are other layers here that are specifically for notes that go on a ceiling plan, etc. So that's what is shown. The model view options here say, for example, that when we're doing a ceiling plan, we're going to show it where the windows and doors are only showing the opening, not the actual swing of the door or the details of the window, as opposed to a normal construction document where they're showing more of the details. So
now, Eric, when we change those settings, it's only for that layer combination. Is that correct?
well, let's talk a little bit just as a general interface controls. Right now, I've opened up the model view options. I can switch between any of these presets here. Let me just cancel out of this. I can also do that from this little pop-up. You can see we're on the reflected ceiling plan. I can switch it to condoc, and we'll see all of a sudden we're still seeing the ceiling elements, but now we're seeing the door swings, we're seeing the details of the windows, etc. Now this model view options, while I can open up and just switch to different ones here, I can also modify it. Maybe for the ceiling plan, I don't know why we'd want to, but maybe we want to say that, okay, with contour, actually with the conduct, maybe we say we don't want to show the markers. You know, so that's modifying this preset to turn that off or to turn it on. So we can modify the presets, or we can select a different preset. Now, when I do select a different preset, like this here, this is just temporary. If I double click on this view, it puts it back to the other style because the view has settings. So this view in the list has some settings when I clicked on the settings button. And one of them was model view options, use this style. Right. So ultimately, Roger, I know you've been around for a long time. You will have worked with model view options, I'm sure, and you certainly have worked with layers there. All of these are incorporated into the view settings. And so if you want to create a drawing that looks a certain way and has the right information, typically you're going to create a view with a name that makes sense, so you can, when you look at it in the list, it's easy to understand, that has defined layers, scale, and other context settings to essentially produce a version of your building. If you think about the building, it has all this information. We're slicing it and presenting it in different ways so that the people who focus on the ceiling and the lighting and running the electrical wires can see that. And you know, they're not seeing certain other things like the landscaping or you know, right, to be trivial. Now, other things that have changed over the years since you started, model view options used to include some graphic controls, such as whether the walls would be shown in a simple fashion or whether they would be shown in a more detailed, or whether they might show all white or all black. These are now handled with graphic overrides, which gives you actually a lot more control. And I'll just demonstrate that briefly here. This tab here is called the graphic override combinations. And so, for example, for the ceiling plan, it's saying that elements that are cut through, like walls and columns, presumably, and in a section, you know, would be possibly things like roofs, they're going to be made empty. So that's why we have the walls being basically looking white. Whereas when we don't have that turned on, we're going to see more detail. We can also say something like presentation solid, and you see this one says cut fills solid black. So let me just manually change this preset here to say okay. Now this is going crazy because we're seeing some ceiling stuff here, as well as the walls being made black. But let's look at something that might be a simple background plan. Okay, so this is another example where this particular view turns on a layer combination that hides most things. It's just intended to show the shell of the building and some of the key structural components. There, it's got a setting for the graphic override that says, make the certain fills just white. It also has some things I think that are that change the pen set to blue. That's what gave the blue thing. Now, if I just change this to presentation solid, we're going to see another graphic override. So without going into an extensive explanation of all of the system there, each view defines a bunch of different styles for what to show, how to show it, and scale and other controls. So that's what these things down here do. They either give you access to just the dialog box when you click on the icon, or to a choice of one of the dialog choices. These are manual settings. In other words, you just say, I'd like to see this, I'd like to see that. But when you have a view, and I go back, let's say to first floor plan view, it set all of these to give us, something that makes sense. Right. So does that help clear?
Yeah, that helps. One of the reasons this came up was that I opened up. I'm on the BIM server, and my so I have CAD drafters that still do a lot of this work. But I opened up one of the files, and it was all green. And I thought, what's going on here? So I texted her, and she said, well, you have the renovation filter on. I didn't turn the renovation filter on, but she said to go down to the tab and click all view or all on, or forget what the,
okay.
And then it was fine.
Yeah, so most important thing in terms of workflow is that you define and use the views in the view map, because then you won't get stuck. You won't say, well, I didn't change it, because as you saw, I switched from here to the lighting ceiling plan. It changes a whole bunch of things down here in a coherent, systematic way.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, the renovation filter uses the graphic overrides. The renovations filter system was introduced in ArchiCAD 15, so quite a ways back, almost 10 years ago. But for you, there may be some things there that you haven't explored. The renovation filter, if I go in here, there are a number of different presets, as we see in most of these dialogues. And for example, planned status says, show what's existing that's going to be there, continue to be there, hide anything that's being demoed, and show the new stuff, but just show them so everything looks normal. But if I switch this to new construction, it's going to show the existing ones, but it's going to, in this case, override the new elements and highlight them in a way that makes them stand out. Now, how they're highlighted can vary depending upon your template or your settings of your project, but let's just see what happens when I say OK. You can see that this is a new part of the project that's been highlighted. Now, depending upon your settings, you might have the entire project considered new because it's a ground up project. And if you have an override, it may make everything blue or green or something like that. And just to show you, if I just switch to existing plan, here's the existing plan without that addition, and with an extra wall here separating out the sleeping area. If I go to demo plan, you can see it's highlighting what's going to be removed, etc. So this is these are a series of views that will hide or show things, and in some cases show them with overrides, and in some cases show them sort of natural like this. And you can have even other variations like this. Override all is going to show all stuff, even demo and new, and it's going to give them color codes. So you can see this is, this is new, the dashed red is like this, and the existing is actually sort of a dashed look. So that's what the graphic, the renovation filter allows you to just show many different ways or phases of the project.
Okay. All right. Well, that helps, Eric. I just, like I said, wanted a general overview because I'm obviously going to have to spend more time understanding all of
Okay.
that functionality. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I'm glad I was able to sort of weave in a bunch of different things, and the fact that you mentioned some other, let's say slightly complex things like, wanting to have different angles on views and wanting to have, different scales. These are things that clearly are part of standard architectural design and documentation requirements. Knowing how to just use ArchiCAD to do them, of course, that takes some expertise. So let's see, I see some comments. Emil says, surely you can set the rotation to 23.5 degrees, for example, by entering the value. Yes, you can. So if I go here, instead of just doing this graphically, which says enter rotation center point, let me hit the escape key to cancel that. I can press down here. All right, so I guess in this case, set orientation graphically requires you to drag it or rotate it around. But if I did want to do that a specific angle, I can say, take these 2 points, and then you'll see that there's an angle. Let me just move my mouse a little bit. You can see the tracker is giving me feedback. So I can just type in the letter A and say, I'd like this to be a 23.5. So I don't have to snap. I can simply type it in. And this is going to be at 23.5 degrees. So you can't type it in here, but you can do it with the tracker. Let me just put this back to 0. And let's see, under document, let's see, it's under view. Set rotated grid. There are grids that you can rotate. I'm not sure the rotated view is here. There's also the pop-up. Yeah, so I'm not sure. I think those are the main places where we're going to look at it, would be there. I don't think it's under guidelines or snap, the snap ones there. So this is the place where I know you can set that. All right, good question, Emil. Now I do see some questions typed in the Slack workspace for our coaching program members that relate to this. So I'll try to take them before I move on to other questions. So Stan says, my site plan was brought in at 0 degrees and I designed within that site plan, but rotated the house plan 1.14 degrees. Whenever I click on any object, it says it is rotated 1.14 degrees, although it is actually normal or 0 to my house plan. Also, I believe there are other anomalies in my sections that may be due to this. Albert, there is a better way to initially set this relationship up. I think maybe you mean albeit, or, like there may be, anyway, maybe there is a better way. Okay, so let's just take a look at the readout of angles here. I won't try to do the 1.14, but let's just say that we had it rotated 30 degrees here. So right now, if I draw a wall, like let's just do a single wall here. Of course, this says angle 0, and this is going to be angle 90 and etc. So we're on the axis. Now let me rotate this view graphically here. So I'll say rotate it, and let's just do take this here and take it up 10 degrees. So I'll just type in 10 degrees. Okay. Now, when I'm drawing the wall, it says that it's a 0 angle. It also has a sensitivity to the 10 degree. You can see that there's a dashed line that is coming out at that 10 degrees, and I'm snapping to it. You can just barely see it when I move the mouse up or down. So it is sensitive to that. It is saying that it's 10 degrees. So it's reading off, that angle. Now, really, this is not 10 degrees relative to the original view of the drawing. It's 10 degrees relative to my rotated view. So that's at least some of the feedback options that you have. Now, there are other things that we could go into, such as rotated grids, and I believe that there is a question that someone sent in about masonry units and grid sizes. So maybe later on, when I get to grids and setting snaps to, handle masonry units, then we can also talk about it in that context. So those are a couple of comments related to angles there. Now, Craig says, do we post questions here? Yeah, Craig, it's fine if you're in the coaching program to post it in the Slack workspace. If so, I have a question about creating a complex profile with a brick ledge. Okay, so you said you can post an image. Yeah, go ahead and post the image and I'll get to it a little later. We do have a bunch of questions that were sent in ahead of time, so I want to, start working through some of those. All right, and Craig sends me an image there. Now, do you have this in a file? If you want to send me a copy of your file that has this in it, then I don't have to create it from scratch to try to answer your question. Okay, so let us see. Then Roger, I'll leave your line available for open, for you to talk, but you can mute yourself when you're not needing to talk.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So let us go then to, so I know Mark Wren sent in some questions, but I was just wondering, I had that other file open and that was from, I think, Robin Wilson. Let's see. Yeah, the stone barn conversion is did Robin make it to the call? Let's see a Rob Rosen, but not a Robin Wilson. Okay, so I don't see Robin Wilson there. So we'll hold on to that. And let's see, looking back possibly at the earlier people who sent things in, so Jerry or Ted Sperling. Okay, so I think you had a question that's related to this, which is how to modify graphic overrides in the ArchiCAD template, how to hide or not hide section markings. All right, this will actually sort of extend on to what we were just talking about. So let me open up your line, Jerry. Jerry, your line is open.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So tell everybody where you're calling in from.
I'm calling from Maine. And actually, Roger's question does lead into this pretty well. I'd like to know how to not show window markers on the site plan, and but show them on the floor plans.
Okay,
and
that's very easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very easy. So let me just put this back to sort of our standard view here. Okay, and fit in window. All right, so we're on the first floor plan. We're seeing window and door markers, right? I'm going to go to the first floor lighting and ceiling plan. We're not seeing them, all right? We can also go to something like the site plan here. And in the site plan, we're seeing the footprint of the building, but no markers there. And of course, we're seeing other information for the site plan. Now, what made the markers go away? In this case, it is the model view options. So the model view options, which you can get quick access to here, as well as from the document menu, model view submenu. You can see on the site plan, it says do not show the markers for, show the doors, but do not show the markers. Now, if I go to the ceiling plan, it's saying show openings only, and it assumes that you don't want to show markers. If I go to detail plan, you can see this is showing the normal door and window, but without markers, whereas the condoc, it's with markers. And you can see the little preview that switches as I go back between them, how it represents it. So model view option presets are going to allow you to turn on or off markers for doors and windows, as well as other details. So for example, right now here, you see curtain wall options. If you had curtain walls in this project, it would show all the details. If I go to presentation, you can see this would simplify. It would show frames and panels, but not the junctions or accessories like shades that might be part of it. And if we go to schematic, it might be showing just line work as opposed to more detailed representations that we're seeing. So the model view options show how much detail and what types of details of the elements do we want to see. So that's your first thing. You want to set up a view. So for example, I've just manually switched it to condoc. As I do this, look at what happens to the doors and windows. We're seeing all these markers here for them on the site plan, which we wouldn't want. So the site plan has a setting that says the model view option should be specific, designed to work for site plans. And if I say okay, you can see how it switches to this setting. So that's the first answer to the first question you had, which is how to hide or not hide. Now, you talked about the window and door markers, right? Okay, now section markers are different. Section markers are visible if the layer is turned on. So controlling what is seen can be managed in some cases by layers and in some cases by model view options. And graphic overrides also have a somewhat similar control of how you're seeing things. So let's just look at the section markers. So section markers are not showing here, right? Why? Because in the layer combination, and I'm using a little icon here to open it up, we're on a layer combination called Condoc Site, and the layers for the markers here are hidden. You can see the eyeball. Whereas on a floor plan, we're showing the section markers and we're showing worksheet markers. When we have an enlarged plan, we may, turn some of these off, or we do other things here. It will hide or show the layers. So the layers are going to control this. Now, what makes a site plan is in part the layers, because we're showing trees and we're showing some graphics indicating shadows, and we're showing some, site area information. Those are mainly controlled by layers. The fact that we don't have door and window markers is controlled by the model view options. So that's some things there. Let's just see what other things you were related to.
Well, actually, when you were doing your tutorial for Roger, I hit override all, and now I can't get out of it. So
okay.
I've got everything green as he said, and then I've clicked no overrides, and it doesn't change anything.
Okay, so there are two different overrides. The term is used in two different contexts that are actually linked, but you changed it in one place and then you're trying to change it in a different place, and that's why it's not working. But I'll get back to that in just 1 minute. So we just dealt with how to deal with section markers.
Right.
We're now going to look at how to get fills to not read as solid black, or this green thing that you're seeing there. So let's look at those two. So the section markers are the layers here, whereas the fills reading as black would be an override, and the fills, everything being green, would be an override connected to the renovation filter. So let me demonstrate that.
Yeah.
So let me put it back to just a normal floor plan here, and get it a little bit larger. All right, so the graphic overrides here, this is graphic override combinations. I can, for example, say presentation solid, and you see how that changed the, what do you call it, the walls, in this case, to be solid black. Now, what makes that happen in the graphic override combination? It has two rules. One of them makes the zones disappear, so we're not seeing colors for the zones. The other makes the cut fill solid black. Now, what does it mean, cut fill solid black? Well, if I click on this 3-dot symbol, this is called a graphic override rule, whereas this is a combination of one or more rules. In this rule, it says anything that is drawn that has a fill, let's make it solid, and let's make that solid fill be pen 1 black. So that's what this is. Now, if I use something like cut fill solid here, this does not override the color. Let me just say, actually, I can switch these to look at them, but it's the combination that's being active. Let me just show you if I change to another combination, we have white model here. Actually, no, let's see, simplified drawing. Okay, so simplified drawing, this is going to change the cut fills to empty, white, opaque. So they'll be white, but they'll be also block anything underneath. So let me just switch that. So you can see how that had different rules doing things, whereas normally when we're doing a construction document, we have no overrides or just a minimal one about zones. And now we can see, that we've got the insulation, etc. So that's graphic overrides. Now, when we have the renovation filter, plan status says show things normally, but only existing and new elements and not the demo. New construction is overriding things that are new here, and that's what I was demonstrating earlier. Now, if we look here, it has this button that says graphic override rules. So what this does is it connects in to that same thing we were just in this dialogue about graphic override, combinations and rules. But you see here are the ones that say, what are new elements? If they're overridden, what will they look like? So right now it's this sort of aqua color here, the fill background. So let me just show you how this works. I'll just activate the new construction one saying that I'd like to show the new stuff in a special way. And you can see how it's highlighting that. Now this new construction here, if I go to graphic override rules, is controlled by this setting. And if I were to make this say a different color, let's just go and make it, I don't know, fuchsia or whatever that color is, and say, okay, you can see here's the preview and there's the thing there. So this is first of all, I'm saying that I'd like to highlight these things or override them in a graphic view. Let me just put this back to something, I think it was probably this one. Was it that? I don't know, it was probably this one here. All right, so when you changed it, you must have changed it here, and then you went to no overrides. So this is no individual overrides, and this has to do with the phasing that has some overrides. So just put it back to either plan status or existing plan, depending on whether you designated elements, which way you did it. So that fixes that issue.
Okay.
Now let's see
Oh,
your.
yeah, okay.
All right. Okay. Okay. So, all right. I think we've covered, the basic things that you were brought up. Is that all right if we move on?
Yeah, it is confusing though that you go to either layer combinations or model view or graphic overrides or renovation status. These are all, I mean, I have to keep them straight, I guess, where you have to go to.
They are overlapping, and conceptually in our head, they all have to do with how do I see things the way I want to see, or how do I fix something that is showing, in an odd way, right? Ultimately, they're grouped in terms of different functionality. And so I think maybe if I try to give a little summary, it may give you a mental handle on it. Layers have to do with categories of elements, and you can show or hide categories of elements with the layers, and you can also lock them, would be a secondary thing. There are other controls in here, but this one is the model view options is going to say how much detail do we want to see about the model. So it's typically about model elements like walls, doors, windows, stairs, curtain walls, etc. And there are things about do we show a marker or not? Do we show a lot of detail or just a little detail? So the elements, if they're showing, how do we want to view them? Then the third one be graphic overrides, which is in general, do we want to highlight certain things or hide certain things or minimize some of the graphics, like, make the walls white instead of having all the details. So it's a graphic style. And then the renovation filters, their primary function is to control existing as-built drawings versus new, possibly demo plans, etc. And as part of it, they use graphic overrides. Like you want to have dashed red lines to show a demo plan. Well, that's a graphic override for demo elements that you can turn on. So each one of them has a different focus. Of course, they do overlap, and conceptually, you know, it is like, well, what controls this thing is, you know, at least potentially confusing to people.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. And the ultimate thing is, once you have at least somewhat of a handle and you're using a good template like master template, then you basically want to use the views. So as I go from first floor plan to first floor lighting ceiling plan, I don't have to go and change every single one of these. I simply double click on a view and it's got things nicely organized. So use the template that's set up, or create views that specifically give you what you want, you know, for your context. So each view you choose, these are your main controls, and these are identical to the ones down below, but they're activated by just double clicking on the view. Okay, is that all right if I move on?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. So let us see. Flipping a floor plan, Orion. I think this should be pretty easy to do here. I'm looking at some other comments here. Oh, Peter Wilson is Robin Wilson. Peter Robin Wilson. Okay, so you are there. All right, so we'll go on to you after this. Wyatt's is door schedule types. Okay, model view options. All right, so these are okay. So a lot, so many questions. Good. I mean, this is what I'm here for. So let's see. We just went over that. Let's just do some related questions from this. So these model view options are not listed in my ArchiCAD. This is from Stephanie Piester. How do I access the model overrides that you're showing? Okay, so I'm in master template. So this is a product that I created along originally with an architect named Scott Bulmer, but have been developing for close to 15 years. And it has a lot of different settings, a lot of different controls. And in the model view options, we have this list here. Now, if we compare that to the Graphisoft standard template here in the US, and of course they have a standard template in each in international English for metric, and they have ones for other countries as well. But if I look at the model view options, looks a little different here. Now I'm going to go and sort of switch back and forth, and I think I can actually show. So here's here's master template. Here's what the Graphisoft ones in the US are. Now it looks like they have more, but actually a lot of them are identical, and they really have nothing to do with drawings. What they've done in what do you call it as a philosophy is to say, if we have a layer combination that says all visible and unlocked, then how would we like the model to show up? How would we like the graphic overrides to be? How would we like the renovation filter to be? And basically gave a name for each one, the same thing, all visible and unlocked. Same thing for architectural site plans, same thing for BIMX, same thing for existing plans, etc. So they've got sort of a set for all of these different styles. And then you can say, well, when I want to have an existing plan, this is how I want it. You go into every one of those graphic overrides and renovation filters, etc., and set it up. Problem is, in the renovation filters, you don't have 20 different renovation states. You only have 5 to 8, depending upon what you need, that you're going to control. So I have a somewhat simpler system here, but regardless, if you don't see either what I'm showing here or this, you may be outside the US and you've got a different setting. You can create a new one. So I just create a new one here. You give it a name and you just go through this and create them. Or B, if you say, well, this project doesn't have it and this other one does, or whatever, we can select a bunch of these. We can export them using this export button. This will save a file onto your computer or a folder with a number of files. And then in your other project, you can import it using this button here. So that's an explanation of why things can be different. It's based on different templates that you start out with. A little bit about my philosophy there, and then just the mechanics of you can either create new ones or you can export and import things. So hopefully that helps you, Stephanie. Okay, so Emil says, when I have a minute, can I address the overheads of so many layers and views? Is my model running slowly because there's so many? I don't think so. Right now, of course, I'm broadcasting, and my computer is doing a bunch of different things. I have a lot of different things open. So I'm not sure, whether you're just, what the cause of slowdowns are. Typically, having lots of layers or model view options or other things don't slow you down. Things can slow you down if you have to sort through a lot of different items in a list. So that's human slowdown as opposed to computer slowdown. But typically just double click on a view, it will very quickly bring up that view. Okay, but of course my computer is doing more than just ArchiCAD, it's also broadcasting. Okay, so, and Eric Reinhardt, thank you, says I'm the explainer in chief. Well, that's why they pay me the big bucks, right? Okay. Marek Krukowski, haven't seen you for a while. How to save a custom skylight, doesn't seem to have this option, just window or door. Okay, I'm just going to give you a hint. It has to do with you create an object and then you change the subtype to skylight. So, but let's see if I can get back to demonstrate that because other people have sent in questions ahead of time. So Robin Wilson, I have this file open here that I just did as a sort of very quick test. So let's open up your line, and you are under Peter Wilson. All right, so Peter Robin Wilson, your line is open. So you have to click on the microphone icon to make it come alive.
Sorry, yes, hello, thank you.
Hey there. So where are you calling in from?
I'm from the UK, Harrogate, North Yorkshire.
Okay, excellent. Well, glad to have you here. So you sent in a question. You do a lot of stone barn conversions where you have 500 millimeter thick walls. So that would be about 18, 19 inches there with a concrete, and you line them with a concrete block wall with a full fill insulated cavity. And you do this as a separate new proposed wall and leave the existing wall as existing. Now, one of the problems is that when you're making new window and door openings, the opening only appears in the existing wall, and then you have to align and add a separate empty opening in the new lining wall. But the no reveal finishes, etc., I'm not sure what you mean by that. And when it comes to alterations, it can get very tedious. So I'm going to show you a method of using the new opening tool, which was introduced, I think, into ArchiCAD 23. What version of ArchiCAD are you on?
I've got 24.
Okay, all right, so then you'll have this option here. And you asked, should you create a new proposed wall that includes the existing wall construction? So it essentially is both, or by duplicating the wall, or should you have a new liner wall? So, and you demo the existing wall, how do you deal with something where you're just adding cladding or something to the structure? You're not really deleting the framing or the original thing. So there are different approaches to it. I'll show you two common ones, and there are trade-offs. In other words, there's nothing perfect. But first thing is, what do we see here? If we look in 3D, it's nothing much at all. You can see that I have what looks like a set of 4 walls and a bunch of door and window openings. Now, actually, this is an interior lining wall. If I delete it, you can see that it is a separate one. Let me just undo that. And if I were to say, show only what's selected here, now it looks like I actually had the other one selected. Let me just say show only what's selected there. So this is just one wall. And what do we have? Just openings, okay? Looked like we were seeing the windows and doors, but they are actually part of the other wall. So let's just say show all in 3D here. Now, how did I do this? And you know, what are the trade-offs of what we have? So let me sort of start over. I'm going to take these 4 walls here. Whoops. And delete them. And this is what I started with just as a little test. So you can see here is very thick wall with just some windows and doors placed in there. Now I'm going to go to the wall tool, and I've got it set for masonry, and I set it for 8 inches thick. So I didn't know how thick the lining was, but I just gave it a rather.
Yeah.
How thick would it be, by the way, in terms of millimeters?
Just a 100mm block with 100.
Okay, that would be roughly 4 inches. All right, so let me make it 4 inches here. Okay, so I'm going to go now, and I'm putting it on a different layer, not the exterior wall layer. I'm putting it on partitions, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute.
That would be useful.
But I'll just go here, and I'm just going to draw this in there. All right, so now those walls that I just put in are actually going to be new. So how do I designate them as new, and how do I get holes in them, right? So let me undo and redo. And this is a little trick that if you've drawn something and, oh God, how am I going to select what I just drew? If you undo it, it goes away. When you redo it, they are selected. So you can see these 4 walls are now selected. Now, in terms of remodel projects, to really control it nicely, you go, it's very important to use the renovation palette here. So the renovation palette is available. Window palettes. It's also can be in the toolbox, so I can click on this. You can see this little icon up here, and it opens or closes it. Now these elements here are set as new. I can tell that because they're selected and this is highlighted. Now the original ones were apparently also set as new. I didn't do that deliberately. Let me just say they are existing. So I've just clicked on this. So now that I've done that very basic thing, I can switch to their renovation things and say, well, if I go to existing plans, the interior walls disappear. But you know, one of the things about this Graphisoft US template is when I show the existing plans, why the heck is it doing an override to make it dotted like that? I think that's crazy. Maybe is one word you could describe it. I'll say, you know, when I'm showing existing plans, I don't want to override it. I just want to show the existing walls, right? And existing would also have demo elements, and I'm going to hide the new stuff. All right. So now, all right, so here's existing, and here is the floor plans as they finish. So this is Graphisoft US's way of saying, well, the floor plans are the final result. Well, the doors and windows are not showing here. Let me just
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let me just fix this one here.
I use the renovation palette.
Yeah, so I figured you had that. So this is one way to do it. Now, one issue when you're doing this is, of course, that the openings aren't going to show here. Now, there is an option if I select this window here, and let's see, let me close this palette. I'm going to show you how you bring it up. If I right-click when I have a window selected, or multiple windows, I can go to connect, and there's an option that says create openings from selection.
Oh.
Now this brings up a palette. It doesn't immediately create an opening, but it allows you to then say, I'd like to create it. There's some controls as to how the opening is sized here. I'll say create opening, and you can see how it popped an opening in here. So let me go now to 3D, and we'll see there's the one opening that I did. All the other ones are not right here. So what I'll do is I'll go to the window tool. Actually, I don't need to open it up. I'll just select all the windows. And for good measure, I'll go to the door tool and select all the doors because there's just one here. And I'll use this create openings. And you can see the window openings just all appeared. I'll just undo it. You can see they've disappeared. I'll redo, you can see them. Now the door didn't quite work, and I'm going to explain why the door didn't work even though it was selected. So we'll go back down to the floor plan. the door here, if I just select this one wall and just show that one wall in 3D, the door here is, I believe it's flush. Oh no, it is actually, it does have some casing out here. I know with Windows, one of the issues that you have to have in order to be able to have it cut the hole is you have to have it sticking into the other wall. So in this case, I added some trim or casing just to stick it in, get it into the other wall. So when you say create an opening, it'll say, oh, you're touching that other wall. Now with the door, I haven't experimented with this too much, but I'm going to show you something that if I select the door here and say create openings, actually, do I do it there? Connect, create openings from selection here. Go to the opening tool. There's the opening. Okay, so I'm going to try to explain this so it's clear. I think there were some things that were already being drawn here. Let me get rid of this. All right, so right now, this is just a normal door. Of course, it's got this wall blocking it there. If I say connect, create openings from selection, create openings, you can see when I said create openings, it created this extra opening. I think that has to do with the tolerance or the shim space that was there. But now if I select this opening here, it's actually, an opening is just literally a void with a certain size, and it can be rectangular or oval shape, etc. Now this opening, now that it's selected here, I can create an opening in adjoining things. I guess, what is it? Connect, cut additional element with opening. So I haven't done this enough to know all of the ins and outs, but basically this gives me the option of saying I'd like to add it to this wall. You notice how the wall highlighted, if I move away from it, it disappears. Move it over there and I tap on it, and now it has cut a hole in there.
Right.
So the windows will cut if their trim goes into the other wall, and you just use the create openings, and you can do all the windows at once. The door, I think in theory it should do that. In this case, I found I had to create a separate opening and then use the option to extend it. Now let's just look at this in 3D a little bit more. So show all in 3D here. There, if I go to the opening tool and I say select all openings, you can see there are these green areas. These are not windows or doors. These are just cutouts in the interior space there. Another way that you can visualize, do you have openings there? What are they doing? Is you can go in 3D, under the view, on-screen view options, you can say, show the opening cutting bodies. And what does this mean? It's going to show openings and what they're cutting through. So you can see there's this sort of odd looking thing that says, I'm going to cut through on both sides. This is just purely for visualization. So it's on screen only. It doesn't affect, anything about your documents there. So I don't have all the answers to the workflow here, but I want to give a credit to Jared Banks of Shoenome, who turned me on and just in one of his tutorials that he publicly posted on how he uses siding. So he has a wall and he'll put on siding that'll have, I guess, overlapping lapping boards. So that has got this sort of zigzag quality, and it has a nice shadow. And when you cut a section through it, it does look good. But that he does that as a separate thin wall that he applies on the outside of all of his normal walls. Well, then how do you get the windows and doors to show through? He said, just select all the windows, as long as they have a little bit of trim going out or casing going out into the volume of the separate wall, you can then say cut openings automatically, and in a split second you're done. So that is the basic way I would approach it. Now I'm going to show you a couple of things here. So we've got the floor plan in the renovation filter. We're seeing this, in a fairly, decent way of representing it. Let me go to existing plans, and you can see we've got the existing without the interior stuff. Now the markers in terms of showing the numbers for the doors and windows and details currently are turned on in this, and they're not turned on in the finished version here. I'm going to show you where that's controlled, but I'll also show you where we have demolition plans. So the demolition plan in this case, God, why is the demolition plan not even showing? This is the Graphisoft one. In a demo plan, we want to show the demo. Actually, we know where. No, there is no demo. This is sorry. That's why this is just adding.
You made it.
Okay. All right. Now let's just do another way that we could represent this. So let me just just drag a copy of this down there. And then let's say that we're going to have a composite that represents the new version here. So let's see, this is, I have it as 1'6" stone exterior. So let me go and create under composites. I'll just create a new one. Let's see, new one here. And let's see, composite with, what did you call this? Aligning here. All right, so we're going to say new one here. We'll start with the outside with stone exterior, what I said, stone exterior here, and it's going to be 18 inches thick. And we're going to have another skin that in this case will be the masonry structural here, and I had this as I guess 4 inches there. All right, so this is now sort of minimally available like that. If I were to switch this switch this wall to a composite and use the one that is the new composite. So now let me copy this, undo back a couple of steps. So, and then paste in these elements will be skipped. Now let's switch this to floor plans. The new element, floor plans. Interesting. All right, well, let me just, I'm not sure what I was just doing there. Let me drag a copy of this down, and we'll switch this one to the composite that I just defined. Is that the one that I did?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so now this one we're going to designate this as new, and we're going to designate this as demo, because it's going to disappear. And let me switch now to the existing, well, here I'm going to say show all visible and unlock. This is where I can now overlap these easily. So now when I show the existing plans, I've got this, and when I go to the new floor plans, I've got that. So the difference here is that this is one wall with one with a window, and that's 2 walls with a window and an opening. Now the window maybe hasn't changed, and right now these are 2 different windows because I have 2 different walls. So if you're doing a schedule, you'd have to say that windows that are in existing walls don't show, but only the windows that are in the new walls show, or vice versa. So this would be our 2 main options, is to actually have 2 copies of the wall, one in its original form and one with a new cladding, and the other there. Now, the trade-off is that in some cases, you're going to do other types of demos. If we have a demo plan, it's showing that this is being demoed. Of course, it's not being demoed, it's being added onto.
No.
So that's the trade-off here, whereas the demo plan doesn't show this is any change happening there. This is still, you know, it's there. And when we go to the new version here, you know, we have the new stuff added. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's good. Could you just not demo it and just leave it? You'd have an existing.
Well, then you'd have two copies. That's what I have here. This is existing to remain here, and this is new. They're two separate ones. But if you had them on, we go back to the one that was existing here. So we're not demoing this. We're actually, I've made it demo so that we wouldn't have two copies of it. We wouldn't have. So you either add a new thing. I mean, it usually doesn't make sense to have two walls sitting on top of each other, right?
No.
So this one is being demoed and replaced, or this one is staying and we're adding. Those would be the two main choices that I would see.
Yeah, the first one you did, the lining wall, as I call it, hasn't got the trimmed finishes on the reveals like the second one has. That's the sort of problem I meant.
Yeah, so you're talking about having the jam, the frame going in there. Yeah, so
it's plaster in most cases.
I'm sorry, what in most cases?
Plaster, the finishing plaster.
Yeah. So now if I go to the floor plans here, yeah, so we can see that this opening is as big as the window was there. Now I can actually take this opening and I can stretch it. Let's see, this is, let's see, what is it? Actually, let me see, this is opening. If I go to the side here, use the option there.
Yeah.
All right, so now this opening is wrapped around here because the opening isn't as big. Let's go to 3D, and it's this window here is what we just did. And so you can see now the original window frame, and then this is the interior brought in, as opposed to, whoops, let me just go over to the other one here. And this one, you know, we have this extra trim. So there are some compromises there. I'm not quite sure. I know that you can take this window and you can say that the window actually sticks through. If we go to frame, instead of being the thickness of the original wall, I can make it thicker. But there are going to be some compromises with that. You can see how it's now sticking out to the face, continuous. But then we have this issue of the casing or whatever. I don't know of a way to get this casing out to the outside. I played around with it. I didn't see an option for that. It may be a limitation in Graphisoft's implementation, but you know, in this case, if I were to turn off the casing once I've got the opening defined, so if we go here to casing and say turn it off here, now we don't have that issue. I do have the opening is a little too big here. You can see, and I can take it and again make the opening smaller and snap it probably to something. So it is a little, you know, there are challenges to this. So those are the two things that I know about. You know, one would be the two elements and coordinating holes there, and the other is the two versions of the element.
Yes. Yes, thank you. I'll have to play around to see if I can deal with the finishes on the inside of the reveals. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a compromise, and it's just, you know, have to push one version or the other as far as you need to go to get it to work. And
Yeah, the second system is easier, I think, but less labor intensive. But then the model's a bit odd because you're not demolishing existing walls when you're not.
exactly, yeah. So you're going to have some things. If you were to do a demo plan, if there were some things being demoed as well, then you might have to do something where you have the demo elements on one view. Let's say it's on maybe it's the interior walls, just to be simple. So you have a view that's just the interior fit out of what's got being demoed, and that's being overlaid on the sheet with the rest of the information. So in other words, you can just like we place drawings on sheets side by side, or 2 or 3 or 4, or a bunch of drawings on there, you can overlay drawings that have different sets of information and different styles. And so that would be a solution where, hey, I want to show demo things only in part of the stuff, but not all of it. And so you'd only have those layers turned on and you'd overlay it in, so that's would be relatively automatic. In other words, you wouldn't have to manually do it every time you make a change, but it would take a little careful setup.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let us see some other questions. Okay, so actually you did have another question that relates to this. I want to show demolished walls and dotted outline on the proposed plans, but not show and just figure the proposed elevations and 3D model. So when you're showing plans, you have different ways that you can choose. Am I showing existing or new, or what scale and what layers? All of these things are set. And when you're just showing elevations or sections, you have other settings in the views. So for example, let me just go to my sample project.
Yes, of course.
So let me go here to, so first floor plan. All right, we're showing the new stuff here. Let me go to the elevation. So I think this would be south elevation. All right, so here's this extension that, is that just that little area that's being added onto. Well, I have a section here in master template for renovation. And if we go to existing plan, we go to existing elevations here. I'm going to now go to the south elevation here. Now, you notice a few different changes. One is we don't have the addition. Another is we've got different colors, different things there. So this particular view has several different things going on. One of them has to do with the graphic override style that is, now let me just go to the one that's south elevation here. You see this one says condoc elevations, no shading. So this is a graphic override that instead of adding colors, it actually is removing something. It's hiding some stuff. If I switch this to, let's say, no overrides, we're going to see the color. So this particular normal view is shown without the color. Now, if I go to the existing elevation here, it's similar. Maybe there's a little difference here because this is a piece of wall or a piece of roof that's being going to be removed, and right now it's showing a little differently than that. That's probably just an error on my part. But if I wanted to switch the graphic view to no shading, we'd have something very similar to the other one. So what else is going on here is this one says show the existing plan, renovation filter, whereas the other one under the settings says show the plan status. So when you said, I want to be able to show certain things on plan and something in a different style and elevation section, you can choose all sorts of environmental styles graphic overrides and renovation filters and things like that for each of the views that you're creating. Does that make sense?
Okay, I'll try and look at that. Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't tried the all layer thing that you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
To get the dotted line to show the walls demolished in the dotted line.
Okay.
Like you showed earlier.
Right.
I'll try that.
Yeah, if I go to my plan representation, and we go here to show the demo plan. Okay, so what is going on here? Well, it hid the extension. It's showing the stuff that's being removed in this override. If we go into the renovation filters, demolition plan says, show these elements to be demolished, but with a different style, and hide the new stuff. Now, if I go to the graphic override rules, this is in master template, but all Graphisoft templates will have something that says, how do you want demo elements to be shown when they are overridden, when you choose to override them? And in this case, I've got it set as make them red. They might be black, they might be blue, they might be any other color, and make them dashed. Those are the main things. And in 3D, it's actually going to show as a bright red color.
That's what happened. That's what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so this is something. If you have the graphic,
I didn't want it in red because it was blotting out the proposed.
Right. So when you're going to the proposed, you want to not use the one that says demo plan. In the elevation or the 3D view, you want to use one of these ones that shows just the new building and it doesn't show that.
Yeah,
now the other possibility is in 3D. Let me just go here. So let's just take a look in 3D. This is an interesting little example. So here we have the end result. This is the little addition. Let me switch it to the existing plan, and you'll see looks much the same. Now, by the way, this is a little piece of roof, because you can't, this main roof here, I can't say, well, originally it had this whole area and then later it gets cut away to do, the new piece. I had to make it out of two pieces that sort of just dovetailed into it. But let's look at the demolition plan. So right now, this is set to show anything that's being demolished in this style. And through this window, you'll see that there's an interior wall that's also being removed there. Now, you can choose whether you're going to show it in any style you want. You can choose what that is. But of course, if I just switch this to show me plan status, then we don't have any of that red stuff.
I see. Yeah, it's settings, isn't it? That's the thing.
Okay. All right. I will move on. Thank you, Robin, for some great questions. All right. So let us see here. What am I going to? All right. So Robin there. Okay. So let's get rid of some of this. Is just one of our people saying that she's not planning on attending some of the upcoming things. There's a whole bunch of them. These notifications are not really needed, but I don't have an automatic way to turn them off. So, okay, but this will all go away in a moment. Okay, so flipping a plan, I think that was Orion flipping a floor plan. Okay, and Orion, let's open up. Oh, did Orion go? Oh, that's too bad. All right. Okay, well, let me hold on to that. Maybe Orion will come back. Oh, you are still here. Okay, so are you listed in the attendance under a different name or different order, like Watkins first? I don't see. I'm glad you're there. Okay, but I'm trying to see where you're listed so I can open up your line. I don't see O for Orion. Interesting. Usually I can see all the names alphabetically. Okay, well, I can't unmute your line because it's not showing up there, but I'm glad you're there. Oh, it says Tobin Doherty. Okay, so you signed in under someone else's name. There we go. Okay, so unmute there. All right, now your line is open.
Hey, Eric, sorry, I couldn't, I don't know why it signed in as that. Normally just automatically signs me in under my name.
All right, so let me just put this back to just our first floor plan here. So you're talking about flipping a plan, right? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so let me just show a few variations of this. If I go and let me just draw a box around this. So I've got a bunch of elements here that I've selected manually with the arrow tool. Go to move, mirror, a copy, go along a line here, straight, and we're going to see that now the sink is on the right as compared to the left. You know, the refrigerator is on the left as opposed to the right. So we flipped it. I did only just the elements that were selected. You know, so I didn't have multiple stories. I didn't have the rest of the building. So it's a start, but it's obviously we generally want to get a whole building or at least start with a good part of the building. So how do we get the whole building to work with, and how do we avoid things like, well, I don't know, maybe you do want the section markers and things to show up. But let's see, I'll undo this. So the basic way that I would approach this is instead of using the arrow tool, I'd use the marquee tool, draw a marquee around the whole thing that I want to do affect. Instead of using the thin marquee, which would only affect one story, I use the thick marquee to say I'd like to select all of the elements on multiple stories, and I can still use the mirror copy if that's what I want, and go here. Now, when I did that, it is doing that on other stories, so that's a little warning, but I'll say, yeah, that's exactly what I want. Do continue, please. And we'll see that everything is now flipped. We can see, you know, the bathroom is on the left side as opposed to the right, etc. Now, text did not get reversed. Markers did not all of a sudden become mirror image, but, you know, everything in terms of building components is flipped. Now, what if we look in 3D? We're going to have a little problem here, and I'm going to show you. So I'll say, show just what's selected in 3D. Well, you can see it didn't copy everything. Why? Because I didn't have all the layers turned on. So let's go and undo this and do it the right way. So I'm just doing the undo here. I put the marquee around there. I'll go to the layer combination that I want. So in this case, we might want to do model, building, and site, because that's going to include all the building stuff. And maybe I don't want to include the site. Maybe I'm just doing the building. So I'll go and use the quick selection and say, let's select these guys and hide them. And maybe we don't want the landscaping, we don't want the shadows here, we'll hide those. And I don't know what this is, just a graphic fill, we'll hide those there. All right, so now that looks like a pretty clear set of layers that was building and site minus some of the site stuff. Now I'll go and again, mirror a copy. Now I think I didn't do it quite square, but that's all right. You know, it won't be a square copy, but it will be coherently done. And if I go to 3D, and we'll just do it in, say, show all in 3D here. We're seeing now we have two roughly mirror image buildings. I didn't quite do it square, but you can see what it did. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be.
Okay. Yeah, so this allows you to also just move a building on a site. Just make sure you have all the layers turned on that relate to the building. Maybe turn off the layer for the site if you don't want to move the site itself, and use the heavy marquee. And then do, in that case, it would just be drag as opposed to mirror a copy.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. Yeah. Okay, so Doug Muir says, you have a trick to have items not count in schedules. Is that relevant to doubled openings? Yeah, so Doug, the answer is that whenever you have a schedule, you're telling ArchiCAD what you want to be listed. And I'll give you an example here. Let me just undo all of this here. So if I go to schedules, so go to schedules, active. All right, schedules here. So we'll do door frame schedule standard here. All right, so these are all the doors. Let's go to Windows. Let's see, want to do Windows schedule here. Okay. All right, you see this says new Windows schedule, and this one has all windows. Well, what's the difference? In addition to some of the contents of it, under the scheme, we're saying, hey, I'd like to show all window types that are existing here. Now, if I go into this one and we go to scheme settings, actually that's the wrong one there. I want this one. This is the new window schedule. The scheme says renovation status is new. So this is one option, is, you can say that things that you want to have listed are only the new ones, like the existing ones don't are not relevant. We don't need to list them. You can do different things. Now, the openings that I created in the version a few minutes ago, where we had windows and then I said create openings, those are openings. They're not actually windows. So when we say, what are we listing here? We're not listing openings. We're listing window types. So those openings wouldn't show up. But on the other hand, when we had the version where there were two different versions of the wall, one plain and one lined, then the ones that are lined, well, that's the new version of the wall. And if it's a new version of the wall, then the windows are new. If you have the existing or demo element, that is the original version, then those windows would be considered existing or be considered demo. So basically, you would just have in the schedule, what do you want to have? What do you want to list there? So that gives you a little guide there for that, Doug. So Yasik said, trick mirror copy did not copy all the windows on the second floor, only 3. I hadn't noticed that. It is possible that I didn't have all the layers turned on properly. But in general, it shouldn't matter what story there are. So Michael Steitzer, I'm old and slow. Will this video be available to watch again? Yeah, when I did the last month, a similar coaching thing, it went on for 4 hours and I still haven't processed it. I figured I should break it up into chunks. Same with this one, it's probably going to go on for 2 or 3 or even 4 hours. I will get it up so you can watch it again. And I understand I move pretty quickly and try to cover a lot of ground, and being able to review it will help you to actually see all the steps. So yes, it will be posted. All right. Okay. All right, so Craig had a question, but let me go to some of the other ones that were sent in ahead of time here. So Robin, okay, we dealt with Ryan's question, Robin's question, Roger East's question, Eric Milberger. Let's see, is Eric Milberger on here? I see Eric Reinhard. I don't think that's the same person, but if Eric Milberger is on, let me know. Tom Palmer had sent in something. Tom Palmer, I see you're on there. All right, so let's talk about this. I can't demonstrate too much on it, or let's say it's going to take a while to demonstrate too much, but let's just at least see if I can show a couple of things. So Tom Palmer, I have opened up your line. Are you there, Tom? So you'll have to click the microphone icon if assuming you are sitting at your desk. All right, Tom, if you can type in and let me know that you're here. Of course, Tom might have stepped away from his desk, so in which case I can come back to him. All right, I'm gonna come back to him because this is a complicated question and it's not, I wanna make sure I do it with him. So we'll wait on Tom. Okay, so I had, oh, and this, more of these notifications that I want to clear out so they don't distract. She said she can make it to some of them, but not all. Okay. There's a lot of them. So clear this out. All right. So Jamshed, I saw you were there, and you, I believe I saw that you sent in a file. Here, let me just get rid of the rest of these here. Annotation text question. I've sent the file through WeTransfer. Go to a different floor. Okay, so let me open up your file here, or open up your line. All right, so Jamshed, your line is open. Click on the microphone icon. I'm trying to see if I can see your WeTransfer thing. I'm not seeing it. Here, let me do a search. I don't see something from WeTransfer. Now it's possible it got caught in a spam filter. Jamshed, are you there? Because your line is open here. So let me see if it got caught somewhere. I don't know who you sent it to in terms of what email, but sometimes things get caught in one of my spam filters. Okay, there it is. All right, so get my files there, download this, test. Okay, so I will have it ready, but I do want to talk to you. Your line is unmuted, so I hope you can come on. But this has been downloaded here. All right, let me go on to another question to see if we have someone else who's actually on the line. Jamshed, Mark Renz. Okay, Mark Renz, are you here? Mark Wallace, I do not see Mark Renz. Striking out here, three in a row that at least people have sent in things. Okay, so, but Mark Renz, if you are there under another name, then type into the chat. Okay, oh, here's this WeTransfer, right? Okay, Mark Renz. Abdullah. Okay, so, all right, so I think this is, have an issue with ArchiCAD rendering engine. Okay, render stuff is going to take a while. I don't know if Abdullah is on here. I don't see him. So, all right, we'll deal with that separately. So Eric Milberger, Tom Palmer, Jerry, we did do Jerry thing here. So Conrado, you had a question from, okay, you just wanted to see that recording again. I definitely can do that. And Robert and Doherty, I know you, so these are going back. All right, so let's see. You had some other questions typed in. Merle, this was from 25 minutes ago. Use layers to control what is shown, but with two walls on top of each other, the intersections probably won't work. Okay, so let's take a look at what your point is and see the way to deal with it. So Merle, open up your line here. So Merle, your line is open.
Oh, Bob, I was just commenting on the previous, well, the previous example you were having. There you go.
Yeah, okay.
So the lower one there, where you have two walls stacked on top of each other, that can be controlled with the layer settings and layer grouping, depending on which you want to show. But like I say, when you do a 90-degree intersection on that, they probably won't intersect correctly.
Right. Okay. Well, let's take a look here. I'm going to go to the existing plans, and I'll just copy the settings of this wall, and we'll do just a single wall and flip it here. All right. Okay. So we can see a nice clean intersection there. Now this wall here, I'm going to say it's existing to remain, as opposed to this wall, which is existing to be demoed. Okay. So in the existing plan, they are cleaning up nicely. Now, if I switch this to the what it will be here, so we have, of course, this issue that the what do you call it? This wall is connecting to this wall just fine, but this interior lining is considered stronger than the exterior. So it is cleaning up, but it's cleaning up in an odd way. Now, your point of what you were saying, well, things won't necessarily clean up. How do you control it? I want to say that when you hide or show things, and I'll demonstrate this in a different way. I know what you're talking about, and it is important to understand that. Let me put it back to the existing plans here, and let me drag a copy. Let's drag a copy of these. What am I going to do? I'm going to drag a copy of them down just for a different approach. So if we had layers, right now we've got the exterior wall layer on, and we also have partitions on. Now, partitions are set at a different layer intersection group. So if I were to put this element on the partition layer, we're going to see it actually is not cleaning up anymore. Why? Because they're different layers, and those layers are told, hey, you're not supposed to intersect each other. Now, and you see these are cleaning up properly in this context. Now, this is not the best way to demonstrate the example in terms of what you're referring to, but let's see if we can clean up these two cases here. So if I switch it to the finished version of the floor plan, if this lining really should stop here, then what I'll want to do is to select one or both of these and go into the building materials. And when I do that, it'll highlight masonry structural and stone exterior here. You can see these two that were in use. And in this particular case, while stone exterior might be not as strong, I'm just going to say, what happens if I made this stronger? What if I said that it had a higher intersection priority than the masonry structural? And I say, okay. And now you can see it is cleaning up in a different fashion because this is lower priority than that. So that's one thing, has to do with building materials and how they decide which one is stronger and which one, you know, should give way to the other. Now, you notice we're not seeing this wall anymore. Why? Because it was designated as a demo wall there. So we no longer have that issue here. Now I'm just trying to think. So without going into a total explanation or even a particularly convincing demonstration, I'll just say that when you switch to show or hide things, in other words, when I maybe turn a layer on or off, if the layer is off, we generally want to have it on, let's go to one that says, let's say floor plans here. We generally want to have things on different numbers. In other words, we want to have the things that are hidden not on the same priority or same intersection group as the ones that are visible, because then they will not try to clean up to each other. So for example, I've seen this so many times. If I were to take, let's see, this, so this is on the partition layer, and I drop this. I'm going to do something that is on, I'll say we'll put it on the exterior layer, and we'll go through like this. All right, these two are passing through each other because they're on different layer intersection groups. If I turn, if I go to the layers and turn off just say the partition one, just manually turn this off. Actually, you know what, I know what, to demonstrate the issue, let me put these both on the same, I'll just put them both on here. No, what am I, okay, let's put this on, put this on interior. Here, okay, so right now they are intersecting. If I go to the layer dialog and I turn off the interiors, what's going to happen? We're going to see this gap. Why? Because it's still trying to clean up to the layer that's turned off, whereas this interior layer is hidden, but it's still on one. If I temporarily or in conjunction with the layer combination switch this to any other number, like a 2, then it does not try to intersect with it. So I think that's what you were referring to as controls based on layer intersection groups. Is that right?
Well, yes, but in your example right now, if you just turn both those wall layers on, you'll still end up with that intersection line going through instead of cleaning up completely.
So if you manually turn it on and off, then these won't change. But if I go to, for example, just floor plans, as soon as I click a layer combination, you notice that it also adjusted the numbers here.
Yeah.
So the layer combination will say turn on and off certain layers, and it'll also say adjust the layer intersection priority. So typically when you have certain things where you want to, let's say, hide the interior walls, you would have a layer combination that would be, you know, let's say shell only or exterior walls only, and you would make sure that the hidden layers were on a different group. So anyway, that's certainly related to this whole topic, just a somewhat different context that I see frequently, people saying, there's a gap in something that I'm drawing. What's going on here? Why is ArchiCAD putting a gap there? And it turns out it is often on a hidden layer that is still intersecting. So we want to, hidden layers, usually we want to make sure that they are turned on a different layer group. So, so I see Doug, you typed layer intersection group management is a great new trick. Awesome. Okay, that's from Doug there. And I guess right now I have Merle, you're talking there. Anything else, Merle?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay. So Alexis says, not a template question, but just about layers. Can I use layers to show zone envelope as a schematic or massing concept while still using normal walls? Can these two systems be toggled using layers? All right, that's something that I can demonstrate, I think, reasonably well with the other file. And here is what we're going to do. So here is our, little building. It looks like a normal little building. If I go to, let's see, do I have a massing one in here? Not sure. Structural plans, area calc, space planning zones. Not sure whether I actually have this in. Oh, you know what? I have it in 3D views. Okay, that's right. It would be in my 3D, more 3D views, cutaway. Let's see here. We have the massing, cutting planes, large marquee. No, this is see-through and framing. Model framing. Interesting. I thought that I would have that in there. Okay, so I'm not sure if it's in there already. So let me just demonstrate what I think you're talking about. First of all, under the View menu, there are controls for the elements in 3D view, and you can go into filter and cut elements in 3D and say, you know what? I would like to turn off windows and doors. Let's just say what happens there. All right, so now we're seeing just cutouts for them. All right, well, that's an interesting option. We go to View, Elements in 3D View, Filter and Cut Elements, which does have a shortcut. It's Command Option A, I believe. Now, if I say All Types, great, it'll show everything. But notice down here, there's something called Zone that normally is turned off, but this is now turned on. I'll just say OK. Are we seeing the zones? They are probably transparent, but not having a color because of some other overrides. Let me go and just do that thing here and say turn everything off except for zones, and we'll turn off the walls as well. So, okay, we're not seeing the zones. Oh, probably because the layer is turned off. That's why we're not seeing it. Let's go here. So there's a layer for, I don't know whether we'd have something, show zone colors. That'll definitely have zones on here. All right, so what are we seeing here? We're seeing volumes. This one is the bath. This one is the utility area. This one is the second floor, loft, bedroom, etc. Now, these exist on the plan. If I go down to the plan here, go to do space planning zones. All right, so what do we have here? Here are our zones. So for example, the sleeping zone is, this is this area that's currently highlighted. It is called conditioned space, so that's sort of gives it a color and a category for totaling things up. Let me just put it into a different category, like residential here. All right, now you can see some changes happen when I change the category to the zone, what do you call it, the zone color here. But let's go back to that 3D view. And I didn't change that. Okay, so actually the color on the plan is independent. It has to, here's the residential. I did change it here, but it has a model representation, glass blue. Let's change this from glass blue to something, I know there's some color zones, residential here. Okay, so there you can see some color. So each one of these zones has information that shows up on the plan and a color that will be based on a category on the plan, but it also has the option of being seen in 3D with a particular surface, in this case, a translucent color. So if we create a view that turns on the right layers in 3D and activates this filter that says, I'd like to show zones, then we can have a massing model with that. And if you wanted to show walls as well, then we could do something like the following. And this is sort of an extra little trick here. If I say, let me go and put the exterior walls, actually, the layer is on. Let's go to the this filter here, and we'll say turn on the walls here. We've got walls with these zones. You can barely see it. We're not showing the windows and doors, just the openings in it, but it's still hard to see all the massing there. But what we can do is we can use a graphic override. So right now we've been looking at the filter and cut to choose categories of elements. We've also looked at layers to make sure that the zone layer was turned on as well as the walls. Now we're going to go to the graphic overrides, which is here. And one of the options that I have in the template is to say see-through walls. So what does this do? This is a rule that I defined in master template that says if the element type is a wall, make it look like glass. So when I activate this particular graphic override, guess what I have? I now have something that can show the walls in a see-through and see the volumes. And of course, right now there's not a whole lot to see, but you'd be able to see different color codes, you know, different volumes with different effects. And so I've got a combination of filtering elements, layers always are going to be important, and a graphic override that says, you know, if you are showing the walls, just show them in this style that is, you know, has a certain surface. We could even make the walls a little softer by making the outlines a lighter color. Like in other words, this is sort of a heavier gray. We could make it a lighter gray so that they stand out less. So, so Alexis says, is this applicable to ArchiCAD 19? You can show zones in 19. You can make the zones translucent. I'm not sure whether they introduced graphic overrides in 19 or 20, but there is an option in addition to this. If I turn off the graphic override, let's see. So we have no overrides. So now I've got the walls showing like this. There is another option that has been around for eons. And if I go to the layered settings, I can say, for example, that I want this exterior wall layer to be shown in a wireframe. You can see this little group here. If I click on a different one, you'll see this is a little wireframe icon. When you click on it, it switches and toggles back and forth. So right now I'm saying that I'd like the exterior walls to be showing, but only their outlines. And I say, okay. So this is a slightly different thing. It doesn't make the walls glass. It makes them empty, but just the outlines. So that's definitely available in ArchiCAD 19. The graphic override may or may not be. I can't remember whether they introduced it into 19 or 20. Okay, so all right. I think, okay, Marek had a question about custom skylights, so we can see if I can answer that. Oh, and Wyatt Powell earlier said something about door schedule types are no longer editable. Is there a way to change door types to show in my door schedule? Okay, so let me see. Those are two different questions here. I still wonder if Wyatt is still on. Wyatt is still on. You asked that earlier. So I'm going to open up your line here. So Wyatt, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. Where are you calling in from?
I'm in Fresno, California.
Fresno. Okay. Not too far away. I'm in the middle of the state. I'm in Northern California. Okay. So you said that door schedule types in 24, they're no longer editable. So you have a schedule that's listing the doors and mentions the type of door, and that text that describes it is not, you can't edit it.
Correct. So in 23, you can see under the description of the door that you can edit the type. And then in our door schedule, each door has its own type. And so it would be, say, type A with 4 doors, type B with 3 doors. And when I started with 24, it seems like that element has been removed. And so now all of my types are just shown dashed. So I can't like categorize them.
Okay. All right, here, so we've got a schedule here. This is a Graphisoft schedule. I'm in ArchiCAD 24. I'm using the Graphisoft door schedule that came with 24. One of the things I do with Master Template is I incorporate everything Graphisoft includes in the US version or the international version, and then I add more stuff. So this one is probably unchanged. Now, if I click in type here, it looks like I can edit this type. So that does seem to be working. Now,
Is that
one
the US version? US version?
What was that?
Is that the US version you're using right there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I wonder why mine's.
Now, there can be issues where the schedule is referring to something that's that's not part of that library part or that library. So I'm using, in terms of the library manager, I'm using the standard ArchiCAD Library 24 for the US version here. Now, question, because I've seen this from a few people, you know, in the last, well, at different points. Sometimes if you have the wrong library, wrong meaning not matching the template, then you can get mismatches. Sometimes if you have older projects and you move things forward, your schedule actually refers to library attributes that are no longer in there. So one question is, if we go to, let me just go to the plan and go to the object tool and go to the folders. Do you see folders like this that have CSI categories? You know, concrete, masonry, metal, etc.
I'm sorry, where did you go to get to there?
I went into the object tool.
Okay.
And then I went to the folder browser as opposed to the search one.
Yeah, so, and yeah, mine shows, it's different than what I'm used to seeing from previous versions.
Is it showing like 3D elements and things like that, sort of large categories?
Mine has one basic library, visualization, and add-on library.
You're using the international version of ArchiCAD, or at
Yes.
least the library for it, and that's going to have mismatches with your US template. So you will definitely want to download the US library and use, and just in general, I'd recommend using that since you are based here in California. So because the libraries, although you know there's a lot of overlap between US and international versions, there are differences in some of what Graphisoft has set up. And if you're using the US standard template and the international library, they're going to be a mismatch. Or if you're using master template with the US version with the international library, or vice versa, you'll have issues. And we see some of those more often in Canada, because in Canada they are often using the US version because they buy from Graphisoft North America, but they work in metric. So, you know, there can be, you know, things there. But that, I think I've pinpointed for you there. So if you want to download the US version, so if we go to Graphisoft's website here.
Yeah, I had the US version, but my firm is using the international version for some reason, and so I think that was what the conflict was.
Okay, all right. So you know that you have both versions around. If you want to look at, do they have are they doing international projects? Is that why, or what?
No, I'm not sure why, to be honest.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm happy to help you offline, or you know, in a separate, you know, consulting thing to help you reconcile what's going on in your office. But that's the cause of the issue.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So, see, custom skylight, Marek here, and let me just check if any of these, like Mark Renz, is, by the way, has Mark come back by any chance? I don't see Mark Renz because he sent in. Jamshade, I had asked, you're unmuted. I don't know if you're around. I did open up your line. If you are around, please click on the microphone icon and we'll try to talk, or type in, at least type in to say you're here. I do see a comment from Michael Steitzer saying, I have to open all layers to make it editable. So you're right, if you have a schedule and elements in the schedule, some of them are totally not editable, you just can't edit any of the fields, they may be on a locked or hidden layer, and therefore the element is considered not editable. In the case of what we were just talking about, I think it was some of it's editable, some of it's not, and that's because of a mismatch. The schedule is trying to show some things that don't exist in that library part. So your point is well taken, Michael, but I think it's not the issue in this case. And Chris Dvorak, hey Chris, said if he imported the schedule from a previous version of ArchiCAD, the variable you used in the older version will no longer work in the newer version. So that does happen as well. So mismatches are, in this case, the cause of it. And Tom Palmer asked the same thing, are the walls locked? So yes, if the walls or the elements, if the layer is locked, my puppy wants to say hello again. Anyway, if things are locked, then the schedule, you can't edit those elements. Okay, so can you be quiet here? I don't know that you can. I don't know. All right, well, let's see what other questions we have. So Marek, are you still on? Yes, you are. Let me open up your line here. Marek, are you there? You got to click your microphone icon, and then we might be able to hear you. So, not hearing you yet. Don't see you having made your microphone on. So Marek may be, again, away from his desk at the moment. All right. Martin Bringy says, how do you create transmittal in ArchiCAD and update them each time drawings has been sent out? Okay, so that's an interesting question. Yeah, let me just put this back to a sort of more normal view here. And no, you're not supposed to bite my buttons. No biting buttons. Okay. Can imagine if I ever had transcripts done of these coaching calls, and in the middle of an explanation it said, no eating buttons. You'd go, what the heck is going on here? All right, but my little puppy. All right, so what do we mean? Let me open up your line, Martin, if you are, say, Martin, I have just opened up your line.
Yes.
Hey there.
Hey,
So where are you located, Martin?
Sydney, Australia.
Australia, okay, excellent. What part of the country?
Sorry.
What part of Australia?
What part is located in place called Burwood?
Okay, all right. I don't know where it is, but I'm sure there'll be other people who will go, oh, I know that area. All right.
Yeah.
All right, so you want to know about transmittals and updating them each time drawings have been sent out. Now,
That's right.
transmittals are an area of ArchiCAD that I only know in theory, and I only get a chance to look at it or talk about it once in a while. But by coincidence, just yesterday, I was looking at transmittals in the ArchiCAD Best Practices 2020 training course. So it happens to be relatively fresh in my mind. So let's at least look at the concept of transmittal as far as ArchiCAD is concerned. I'm getting some background noise. It sounds like it's from your
I'll mute myself.
mute your line when you're not talking.
Okay, no worries. Thanks.
Good, that's much better. All right, so first of all, we have a layout book here, and I'll just go to, floor plans, and, certainly no surprise there. If you've used ArchiCAD at all, you know that you're going to have many sheets, and you're going to do some printing or saving out as PDF or some other format. Let me put her down to see that she'll accept that. So first of all, what makes a transmittal? Well, it's basically issuing drawings in some form that you're publishing them. Now you can, so I'm going to go from very quickly through a couple of basic things, and then we'll get to transmittals. So I can go here and I can say that I'd like to print or plot this one sheet and set up where it's going to go out to. And I can also go to save as and say I'd like to save a copy of this sheet in one format or another, like a PDF or DWG or things like that. Now, if I want to do multiple sheets, like a whole set of drawings, then I would use Publisher. So Publisher is available as the fourth button here in the upper right of the Navigator palette. And each Publisher set has a bunch of views or layouts on it. And so they will vary depending upon what you need. So in this project, there's two versions of the sheets just for demonstration purposes. One of them is numbered 1 through 17. The other are numbered 100 series, 200 series, 300. But let's just do the simple one and say, I want to print out, let's see, actually, let's do, the following sheets. So I can go and say that this is layouts to DWG. Let me go to layouts to PDF here, do a similar one and say that I want to send these out here, and I can publish the selected items, or I can publish the entire set. So when I publish it, it goes out of the office. Now, is there a record of publishing it? Not directly. This is just simply do this for me, and there's nobody who's written down a note saying it was sent or it was saved, or we want to make a milestone or a record that this went out. So what is a transmittal? A transmittal is something that you define in the layout book settings. So if I right click on the very top item in the, in the layout book area, you can see there's book settings and there's create new transmittal set. So again, I don't know all the ins and outs of transmittal sets, but I'll answer a few basic questions here. So if I say create a new transmittal set, I give it a name here. So we'll call it, bid set 1 or something like that. Right now it's in progress, meaning that I'm creating a name for it, but I haven't actually closed it. I haven't issued it. So I'll say, okay, it's in progress. Now, what does this transmittal set have in it? You notice that all of these layouts now are blue. That means that they potentially could be in the transmittal set, but we haven't actually determined that. I think if we go to document and we go to, drawings, publish. Now this is where I'm a little confused where we get access to the transmittal set thing. If I go to right click here, remove from current transmittal set, let me go to, okay, I've just said to remove it, add to current transmittal set. Where do we get the transmittal set? Transmittal set details. All right, I guess it's, again, back under the top of the layout book here. Earlier I was saying create a transmittal set. Now there's an option for transmittal set details. Here's this scheme. No, it's not that. Where is book settings? Here it is. Okay, it's under book settings. So it was in that same area. So let's look at this very generally, and I won't go into detail for two reasons. One is I want to cover other questions, but the other is I only know it up to a certain level of detail, unlike other parts of ArchiCAD. So we have some things about how the numbering of the sheets are handled, although you can also override that based on groups, subsets that have 100 series, 200 series, etc. Then next we have transmittal history. This I named bid set 1. It is in progress. It has not been issued, and it includes currently all of the sheets in my in my layout book. At least in theory it is. Now I have some of them that are just in the trash and recycling area, TR. I have some that are structural that, let's say I'm not outputting structural right now. I can right click, or I can actually highlight these and say, click on the X, and you can see they all disappeared from there. Maybe I'm not including the details here in this one, so I remove them. So these are the sheets that currently are in this transmittal set. Or maybe I want to just say, you know, I guess these are also some sort of organizing tools. And really, all of this stuff down here is not in it. So my transmittal set is just these particular ones. Now, if I go and publish this and, you know, output it, I can close the transmittal set here. So if I click close transmittal set, you can see bid set 1 was transmitted on today's date here in the US, March 25th, 2021. So this is now closed. Now, what happens when we close a transmittal set? We can still print things, we can still make modifications, but it will keep track of what's changed as you go into a new transmittal set. So if I say, give me a new transmittal set, and we'll call this revised bid set here, it's now in progress. The revised bid set starts out with all of these. This is a record of what was output in the earlier bid set. Now, have I changed anything? Well, of course, I haven't done anything now, but in general, and again, I'm not going to try to demonstrate all of these things. When you make changes to your project and you update the layout sheet or the layout sheets, you know, all of them or some of them, then there'll be a record that they've been updated or changed in this transmittal set compared to a previous one. And you can do a report of changes, and you can do, you know, a summary of new sheets, and you know, even just say I want to print only the changed sheets. So this at least is pointing you in the direction of it. I don't think that I should go much further because I'm not going to be able to guide you in details. But if you do have a specific question, I can do my best to help you with that. So Martin, your line, you can reopen. Let me know. Did I teach you, or were you already aware of the transmittal set options here?
No, I didn't realize that option is available.
Okay, so now you know where it's located.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so obviously you can look in Graphisoft's help. If I go, that would be I would recommend this. You know, go to the help menu, go ArchiCAD help here, and then just look up something like. Why is this? Wow, this is in a foreign language. English. And let me just transmittal set. User guide, managing transmittal set. Okay. So create a new transmittal set. Here's a little video.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that.
Yeah. So that, but now you know where it's located. That it's in the layout book settings, and the right click on the layout book heading, and then you can manage those. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I see Kevin Young wrote 5%. I don't know what that means. Is what you're referring to. And Maria said it's time to go to bed here in Europe. Yeah, I imagine it's night, give or take. So thank you for joining me. Okay, so Marek, I did call you earlier. Marek Krakowski, are you around? Because I would be happy to try to help you with the creating a custom skylight if you can either type in or open your microphone. Now he may have left the office or left the area. Okay, no microphone. All right, you are there. All right, so we will communicate as best we can with typing. So let me go to the other file where there's very little drawn. And let's say, how would you create a custom skylight? So because we can't communicate very easily because you're just going to type, I'm going to create the most simple custom skylight I can, which would be I'll just do something with the roof tool here. Let's see, what am I going to do? Let me just draw, first of all, a polyline rectangle, let's say 6 by 3. Okay, so here's a rectangle shape. I'm going to do, actually, you know, I'll do it with the slab tool. I'm going to just take the slab and make this very thin. So it's going to be just made of wood, wood structural, and it's not going to be 10 inches. We'll just say it's 4 inches high, just to be arbitrary, and just do this. All right, so I've now got a flat slab there. I'm going to go and actually I'll take the polyline here. I'll select the polyline and I'll use the offset all edges, and we'll take them in, let's say 4 inches, just to be arbitrary. So that is a line. This is the slab, and the slab, I'll go and say cut a hole out of it, that a magic wand this. So you can see the slab now is a frame there. And then I'm going to go to another, what do you call it, slab, and we'll say that something that's going from, let's see, that's the top here, 4 inches. So we'll say it's just going to be a 1/2 inch, and it's going to be made out of glazing. So glass clear, and I'll put this in here. All right, so this is a very simple shape. Let me just take this and we'll look at it in 3D. Okay, so you can see we have a frame. We actually have a little piece of glass inset into it. So I'm going to select all of these guys and go to the File menu and say under Libraries and Objects that I'd like to save the selection as, and we have various choices here, but we don't see skylight. Okay, so I'm going to say save it as an object, and it'll say, all right, I'm going to take the top view of this as the floor plan view. I say okay, and we'll just call it skylight test 1. Right now it's going to go into this little project in the embedded library, and we'll see what we can do with it. So it records some of the things like it was made out of wood, structural, and glass, and it used certain pens. I'm going to leave those alone. Now, if I go to the object tool, zoom out a little bit, and click, you can see something very similar, but this is a skylight. It's the skylight object, right? Now, I can't tilt it, not easily, because objects don't have automatically built in something to tilt it. And it won't automatically cut a hole in the roof. It won't, you know, it's a variety of things that are missing in terms of making it a skylight. Now let's look at how a skylight works just in general. So we have a little building here, and I'll go to the roof tool, and we'll go and just say I want to do a set of roofs here, and we'll say that they're going to be on the second floor, but they are going to show on also on this story, and we'll just do a box like this. All right, and now if I go to 3D, show all. Okay, so here we have a simple roof. Now, if I go to the skylight tool, which I'm just trying to identify, here's skylight, and I just click on the roof, you can see that it instantly placed something on the right angle, and it has certain complexity there in terms of it, you know, it's got a frame and all of that. The skylight tool has a number of different skylight types that you can do here, but regardless of what type it is, one of the things that it does is it will automatically match the slope of the roof, and it will cut out a hole. You can see that there's actually a hole in that roof as opposed to seeing the roof underneath it. Now, if I were to change the roof to a different slope instead of 6 and 12, let's make it 8 and 12. You see that the roof changes and the skylight adjusts as well. So I'll undo that. So that's what makes the skylight different. And also, if I were to take the skylight and drag it around, you can see the hole disappeared and the new hole comes in. Now, how do we get this as a skylight here? Well, I can select this object, first of all, and say that I'd like to, okay, so I want to select it, go to the File menu, Libraries and Objects, and say, I'd like to open this object. So this, instead of opening the object tool, opens the object definition. Now, the object definition is a dialog box that some of you may know pretty well, others may not know at all. It has a whole lot of controls here. Let me just close up this. If I go to the 3D, there's this whole script here. So what the heck is this? This is something that says draw a bunch of prismatic forms with these coordinates, do something else, etc. And ultimately, we end up with this thing. Okay, so this is the object being visualized. This is how it was being constructed. Now, one of the things that allows us to apply objects from one type to another is what's called the subtype. So here we see in the details area something called select subtype. So right now, I just said, I drew some stuff, I said, save it as an object. It says it's a model element. Now, model elements can be all different types of things. It can be a building element. It can be a beam or a column. It can be something that's more like furnishing, a bed or seating or things like that. And when you decide what it is, ArchiCAD will treat it somewhat differently. So, if you make it a certain type of equipment element, it may all of a sudden have fields that you can fill in for an equipment schedule, because it says, oh, well, equipment has a manufacturer, it has a serial number, it has some other things there. Well, in this case, I'm going to see if I were to change this from just a general model element to, let's see, covering. No, it's not a covering. It's not a roof covering, but it could be something there. It is an opening, and it is a roof opening, and it is a skylight. Okay, so I'm basically looking around until I find something and say, oh, yeah, that's what it is. All right, so I'm saying, let's call this a skylight type of object. So I say select. And now it says that it's a skylight type of object. It still is named skylight test. I'll just say save it. Now, when I go back to the floor plan, that element is still there, but when I select it, let's see, this one still, let's see, if I open it up, object selection settings. All right, this one is still considered an object here, but let's see, I think it should be, because I placed it with the object tool, but if I open up the skylight tool, here's skylight test 1. Okay, so in other words, we had other skylights available, and I guess linked libraries here. So these were the ones that we were looking at before, but here is the one that I've just created. It is now available as a skylight. Now, will it work? Will it actually fit into a roof? That's another question, but we've now told ArchiCAD, think of this as a skylight. All right, let's go to 3D, and fingers crossed. I don't really know. I haven't tested this in a long time. I'm going to go to the skylight tool. I'll say, you know what? I'd like to put in this skylight thing. Say, okay. I'll click. All right. Now, what happened here? It cut a hole in the roof. Good. It placed a thing. Well, sort of okay. It's anchored in the wrong place. It's not tilting. So there are some missing pieces in here. So what I've just shown you now is, I don't know, we could call it half of the process. I'd have to look a little further to see what you need to do to make something a truly usable custom skylight. But I will point out that it's already got a hole of the right size, and it already is placing an element with the skylight tool. We just need to get this, it to tilt and to be anchored in the right way. So I can look into that and possibly, respond to you via email or, create a little tutorial on it. I don't think it's worth having me research it during this session, but I've shown you half of what you need to do. So Mark, let me know. So I see Romerick just logged in a little while ago. All right, so you wanted to save a roof vent object as a skylight for easy placement. And you said, thanks, this solves it. You can work with it. Okay, so if you have an object that already is in the library, what you would want to do is save a copy of it, and then in that copy to your embedded library, then you can edit it and you can change the subtype. Now, maybe it doesn't need to cut a hole. Maybe it's just going to drop onto it. But there would be some scripting to make sure that it can tilt automatically. And that's something that I'll have to check. A lot of stuff you can do in ArchiCAD simply by pointing and clicking and placing, but there are some things you may need to script. And there may be just a line of code that says, rotate this object based on the roof that it's going into. And that is probably like one line of code, but you have to know exactly what the code says. All right, so it was missing from documentation. Okay, so I can look into it, and we'll see. So we got it partway. So thank you, Mark. So let's see, who has another question? Needs to read the roof angle? Yes, absolutely. And we know that it's built into the tool, but it's not necessarily built into a custom object that you just say, oh, please use the skylight tool to place it. All right. So see some Craig. Okay, so from our, what do you call it, ArchiCAD coaching program. See, Craig had a question that he seems like he resolved already. So let me go back to some of the ones that were outstanding here. And if anyone else, any questions, we've gone 2 hours, 40 minutes. We can finish up soon, or we can go a little longer. Let me know. So, so Jamshed, well, Jamshed did send me something, and he's on the line. Let me open up your line again, because so Jamshed, are you there? Can you click on your microphone icon and open it up? And you should see a microphone icon. All right, I see, yes, you're there, good. Okay, I did unmute your line, so if you go to the GoToWebinar control panel, you should be able to see a microphone icon that's gray and click on it to make it green. You just did it?
Okay.
There we go. Jamshed, where are you located?
I'm in Toronto.
Toronto, okay, excellent. I don't know if you knew that I lived in Toronto for 18 years.
Oh, is that so? Did you like it?
I did very much. Yeah, I was a younger man then. I was in 1975 to 93, and I lived many of those years off of Queen Street West, near the art gallery, near the AGO. Anyway, and that's where I started my family with my wife and our son, who was born in Toronto in 1989.
Wow.
Okay, so let's see. You sent in a question here. All right, attach a screenshot. You have this issue with, why is this taking a while? I know it was just a simple little graphic here. Oh, this is frustrating. Let me just see if I can save it and then open it up. Save screenshot here, and then open it up. Okay, so here is your screenshot. We can see this little marker with an arrow, and the arrow or leader line has separated from the marker, and we see something similar off to the side there. And you're saying that seems to happen whenever you close and reopen the file, is that right?
Yes, or sometimes like if it's on the ground floor, I go to second floor and come back, then I see this happen.
Okay, so you sent me a file, I believe it was called test. What version of ArchiCAD is it in?
23.
23, okay. So let me then, just to make sure we're not, that I'll make sure I'm using the same version of ArchiCAD 23, and that way, if I fix the problem or reproduce the problem, I know that it's based on the same context. I wouldn't want to open it in 24, say, hey, there's no problem, and then find, well, 20 has a bug. Now, so this is a property label, right? You're using a label that's associated to an element, and it's displaying some information about it. So let's go browse here. By the way, I'd love to get some feedback from all of you who are on the call. We've got 70 odd people on the call right now. There were well over 100 at certain points. What do you think about the coaching program? Are you finding it interesting, useful? I assume since you're still on, those of you who are still on, you're finding it somewhat interesting. Let me know. Love to get your feedback. Hi, Baba. All right, so I'm opening up your test file. So Conrado says, same is happening to me. So that's interesting. So let me open up Conrado's line and we'll see. So Conrado, you've had the same issue with this part. So maybe it's a bug, in which case all I can do is just discover that it works, does the same thing for me, and then possibly suggest a workaround, if I can figure it out. Okay, so we have a couple of labels here. We're on this story. It looks okay here. Let's go up to another story and let's come back down. So I didn't see a change there.
Yeah, try changing the scale and then.
Okay, so right now we're at 1/4 inch to a foot. Okay, let me just zoom in and out. No change there, so not changing the scale that way. But if I were to switch this to, a 1/2 inch to a foot, you can see how it's attached. It's still attached there. I switch it to 1/4 inch to a foot. It's still attached, so it's still looking all right.
Yeah. Now go to the to the second floor.
So I'm just going to different stories and then coming back. So not a problem for so far. Now let's just see what settings there are here. So first of all, I select it. We can tell, got some handles here that I can move around. If I were to go to this handle, can I reposition it? Yeah, it looks like I can. So I can move these things around. Looks like this distance is sort of locked in there, at least. But if I grab this one, then I can stretch it out. Okay, so those are all parameters. Now, as I'm moving this, you can see there's something that says distance, right? In other words, the distance is indicating something. I could put it in numerically, and this, so there is some information that's being retained numerically, as well as just moving a point in space. If I open up the settings of it, here it's called property label. We can see a preview of this. You can see that the pointer is checked, so that's what's giving us the leader line there. It has some options for how the angle is going to be. In this case, I just moved it around and it's 74 degrees going up here. Arrowhead, symbol label. So the symbol label has to do with how the orientation is, and the custom settings have to do with what type of marker shape it is, fit frame to text. So let me just switch this to a different marker style and say okay. All right, still seems to, fit nicely. Yeah, so I'm not seeing the issue that you had there. Now you mentioned rebuild, so there is under a view, refresh, there's rebuild, and then there is also, so if you said that sometimes works, but sometimes not, I think if I hold down the option, okay, the shift key, so I'm holding down the shift key and you can see that that command is changed from rebuild to rebuild and regenerate. This may help you to just have ArchiCAD reanalyze what's going on and have it clean up. That I've seen that for some things historically where stuff just didn't update the way it was supposed to, and the rebuild and regenerate. So that's under the view menu, refresh, and then press down the shift key and you see you have this option. Obviously, I'm not seeing a change here because everything's working, but for you, that might help.
Okay.
So is there anything else that I can look at here?
No, this was the only thing. I can give it a try and see if it works.
Okay, well, good luck with that. I'm just seeing if Conrado, who had said this is happening to him. I've opened up your line, Conrado.
Yeah, Eric, the same thing happened to me, but the refresh is not working.
The refresh does not work?
No. Hey, I just want to alert to something that happened to you. When you press the help, the screen display in Japanese characters.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing happened to me, and it drove me crazy this morning because not only display that in Japanese, but also the keyboard was not responding to the same configuration.
Mm-hmm. So this is only only in your web browser. Is this only in your web browser when you go to ArchiCAD Help?
Yes.
Okay.
So I have to do the same thing that you did.
Yeah.
Just go to the settings and change to English version.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know what's going on with Graphisoft's site. As I mentioned at the very beginning of this session, my own websites were hacked today, and in fact, I don't even know if they're all up and running. But things happen online. It is weird. So I doubt this is a hack, but there's some, something that just not set properly. All right.
Yeah,
but
you are on a Mac, and
yeah.
I'm on a PC,
Mm-hmm.
and the same thing is happening. So
Okay.
it's not the version of the program.
Yeah. All right. Now, one thing I want to check here is I'm in ArchiCAD. And if I go, let's see, about ArchiCAD. Okay, 5005. So I'm in 5005 is there. Go under help and check for updates. So check for updates will say I'm in ArchiCAD 23. It says your ArchiCAD is not up to date. All right. So when it's up to 7,000, it came out just literally 3 days ago here. So question for Conrado and for Jamshed, what version of ArchiCAD 23 are you running?
I'm in 24.
Oh, you're in 24. Okay, so you the same issues there. And Jamshed, I think you mentioned that you were in 23.
Yeah, 3,000.
You're in 23, and your build is 3,000.
3001 or something.
Okay.
I can check.
All right. So in general, you should make sure your ArchiCAD is up to date.
Okay.
So, I can download this now. It'll go and download it. I won't install it until after we finish today, but it'll download it and you can just double click to install it. You'll have to quit out of whatever project you're in, and then you can install that there. All right, and the same thing for, it's interesting, it didn't tell me that I was out of date. Let me switch over to my ArchiCAD 24 and say help, check for updates. And now this is for 24. Interesting, why is it talking about the geometry exchange update? That's not what I'm caring about there. So it's like the 24 menus here. So we're in 24, say, check for updates. And yeah, it is. So there's some odd things because it's coming up with this. Now,
on the 24, check for up.
it came up with two things. It came up with two different windows at the same time. So actually, it didn't duplicate it the second time I did it. So I don't know why it brought this up, but it's saying ArchiCAD is not up to date. And again, there's an update from 3 days ago. So I will update this as well. And library is also not up to date. So I'm going to go download these. Fortunately, I have very fast internet and it usually goes pretty quickly, but I'll do it after. Okay, so I would always check on that because if you have something strange, bring everything up to date and see if that fixes it. So I'm looking at comments here. So Jacek Leshevitz, hi Jacek, thank you for your comment. It says thank you for these seminars. There are a lot of helpful hints that I would not think of asking you about that teach me something each time I attend them. Really appreciate your time and input. Appreciate that, Jacek. And Ian Reed, you're an excellent communicator. Dealing with problems on the spot is a real skill. Well done. Thank you. And Jerry Sperling, very helpful. I can only handle all the info once a month. Yeah, it is. Well, we sometimes cover a lot of things. Peyton Monty, you say you're introduced to ArchiCAD 2 months ago. I watched your training videos, which helped with the basics. This was my first ArchiCAD webinar. Very interesting. Appreciate you taking the time to help people learn. I'm sure I will have more questions down the line, but you're a great teacher. Thank you. Okay. I appreciate all the feedback. Peyton, if you want to go deep into ArchiCAD, and I didn't mention this earlier, but hopefully most of you know that I have an online training course called ArchiCAD Best Practices 2020. It's intended to be a resource for the 2020s. Initially I thought 2020, what a great year. In 2020, it's like in the US, we have 2020 vision is when your eyes are really clear seeing. And then the pandemic came around and I thought, should I really keep the name 2020? Because 2020 was a horrible year. But anyway, it's the ArchiCAD Best Practices 2020, and you can get more information and sign up at archicadtraining.com. So if you're on the line here, it's 3 hours in, I know you care about using ArchiCAD, and it's my mission to help you get the most out of the program. Check out archicadtraining.com. All right, Tom Palmer says the update for ArchiCAD includes Param-O. So Param-O I have just heard of. The brief mention, it's apparently a way to create objects in ArchiCAD that are parametric. So in other words, the stuff that we take for granted when you say, hey, I have a window and I want 3 panes of glass by 4 panes, or 2 by 2, or whatever. Those are parameters, or I want the casing to be certain width, or certain color, or certain surface. Those are all things that we use routinely whenever we create or place ArchiCAD elements. You can create custom elements like this funny little skylight, but how can you make that skylight design have a different thickness every time, or different subdivisions? Well, apparently Param-O will make it relatively easy to do visual scripting. I'm an expert on the old style, what's called GDL. So I know as a programmer, because I got my degree in computers, how to do that. But it is beyond most ArchiCAD users to use GDL. It's not that it's impossible, but it can be pretty complicated, and frankly, it is using a very old style of programming. This Paramo I have not seen, but sounds cool. So Tom, thank you for pointing out that that is now included in ArchiCAD, meaning whether you're on Mac or Windows, and I think it originally was only on one platform like Windows. Now it's available for both, and I'll have to figure it out so I can show how to use it. That's one of my pleasures, is to be the pioneer out there getting the arrows in my hat and figuring out how to use the stair tool or the railing tool or the curtain wall tool and come back and say, hey, I got something. So, all right. Let us see other questions that were sent in. Okay, so Jamshade, I didn't reproduce the situation. The only thing perhaps will be helpful is check out that rebuild and regenerate option, and
Sure.
update your ArchiCAD. It's very possible that the library or the program or both, when they're updated, will work better. Okay.
Sure. Thanks.
And you're welcome. So Andrew Reeks is saying here, I don't know if he's on this call. I don't see him. So, all right, my thoughts on bringing in a library of things from another program like Allplan. And okay, so I can give him some answers there, but let me see if there's anyone else on this call here. So we did Orion, we did Robin, we did Jamshade, and this was someone sent, was that Jamshade? I'm not sure. I think it was Mark Renz. Is Mark Renz by any chance come back on? No, he's not there, but I could look at that. And this was a different type of question. Cinda, I think this is going to require being with, I know Cinda was driving, so she wasn't going to be able to be on. All right, Eric Milberger, by any chance, is Eric, I don't see him on there. So we have those two, Eric Milberger and Mark Renz, that I could see if I can explain things and then just point them to the recording. So let's see, Eric Milberger. Oh yeah, this is the one with the grid, and I think it really would benefit from him being here particularly since he's new. So I'm going to wait on that. Now the other one was Mark Renz. Use some help. Foundation wall, want to show up in my foundation plan, however it doesn't. I've changed the walls to show footings do not show on the foundation plan. All right, well this, maybe I can look at this, and this has to do with visibility of elements. I think I might be able to help. So here, version 24, download, named Colori, okay. And we'll go to this 24 here. I think I don't think I need to save this. I'll just save this as ACP 2021-03-25 work file. All right, so in case for some reason we want to open that up again at any point, I have that. Even just to check out how to make the skylight to work. So it's just saving it, and I'm going to open up his file, and we'll take a look at visibility of footing elements on the foundation plan. And I may ask some of you to give me some guidance, since Mark is not on the line, if I have some questions about interpreting what he's saying. So we're going to say open here, and it is Kaluri. I've already saved this work file, I believe. So So how are you all doing there? I see some comments. Michael Stetzer, this is a message from I tried to go to your website. The requested URL was not found on the server. Yeah, I've been having some website problems today. So I apologize. Thank you for just mentioning that. Yeah, may still be down. Yeah, okay. Surain Gunasakara says, thank you so much for the training session. Super appreciated. Steve Pribble, hey Steve, thanks me. All right, Doug Muir, your workshops are great. Okay, I don't have many colleagues who use ArchiCAD, so they're fun as well as quite practical, answering questions I never thought to ask. Many thanks, you are welcome. All right, Jamshed, you have another question. If a file becomes corrupt, what's the best way to copy the project to a fresh file? All right, well, we can look at that. Let me just talk briefly. There's two types of, well, let's say there's two cases that are be very distinct. If your file is so corrupt you can't open it, that's one thing. On the other hand, if your file, if you open it up and it's there, but you just think you're, you know, something's funky in there and you want to get it over to a new file, those are two different things. So in one case, and I'll just mention this, if we go to the file menu and I say open and I select something like this, there's an option to open and repair selected file. So if I click that and I open this, then ArchiCAD will do some more, I don't know if it's an audit, you know, it'll examine this file structure and it will attempt to do some sort of cleanup. So that may help, particularly if you can't open the file at all, you know, try open and repair. Then the other thing is, so if you do get it open, but some things are funny, then remember what I did earlier when I was mirroring a copy of the project, flipping the plan. So I used the marquee tool. I turned on all layers, and you'd want to also unlock them. So you'd want to make them visible and unlocked. Use the marquee tool and copy. This will put on the clipboard everything in your virtual building. That means all this, the model elements and all the annotation like dimensions and text and labels that are on the plans. It will not copy the elevations or the sections or the details or the layout book, but it'll copy the building and the plan annotation. You then go to another file and you paste. Now, before you paste, ideally you should set up your story structure the same. So if you have 5 stories, you want to create those 5 stories ahead of time with the same story spacing. And ideally, it should be based on the same template with the same layers in use so that when you paste it in, those layers just drop into place. If you are copying from one template to another, there would be extra work you'd need to do to try to synchronize the layers. But that would be the way that I might take something that, for some reason, the environment seems to be not working right, and I put it into another home. It's like taking all your furniture out of one home and putting it into another one. But, you know, there's no perfect analogy because you're sort of taking the structure of it too. Maybe it's more like taking the whole darn building on a truck to another site. But even then, it's not quite the same. All right, so what do we have here? The question, if I bring this up here, so is, and let me just make it a little larger so it's easier to read. I have new foundation wall and footing that I want to show on my foundation plan. However, it doesn't, or only parts of it do. I've changed the walls to show as cut. This way they display. However, I don't know if this is the best way to do this. I'll change the walls to show as cut. Okay, I'm not sure. But foundation plan, all right. So we are in his project. And right now we are on the foundation presentation plan here. And we can zoom in on this area here. So I, unfortunately, since he's not here, I don't know, you know, is this existing and this new? Let me guess here. This is structural footing. It's saying that it's going to show projected with overhead, whereas this, this element looks like it's a little piece of wall, not the whole wall. It is symbolic cut. Okay, all right, so if we were to change this to the projected with overhead, we can see that it sort of disappears, or we just get some lines there. And I'm not even sure, are we still seeing the wall? Yeah, we are still seeing the wall, but we're seeing it in a different way. So one thing that we have in ArchiCAD is the concept of a floor plan cut plane. So when you're creating a plan, you're in symbolic terms, you're saying, what would you find if you were to cut through this building at a certain level? And generally in the US, it would be 4 feet. In international use, it might be 1 meter or 1.1 meter, I can't remember. But basically sort of chest level. And that cuts through most windows and it cuts through doors. And so when we see the wall, we see the basic framing of the wall, we see the fenestration there. Now that is when we're looking at this, I select this element here. It is right now saying, it's saying, show it wherever it would be cut through and anything below that, as well as some dash lines for anything above. Now, if we say symbolic cut, it's saying, you know what, this may be sort of located somewhere arbitrarily in space. Just pretend that I'm cutting through it and show what it looks like. So symbolic cut looks like this. Now, what is the height of it? This is going from -8 feet 4 to -1 foot 1.5 inches in relationship to the project 0. Now, if I'd say, what is it in relationship to the current story, the foundation level, we say height and home offset. It says it's going from 2 feet off of the foundation story up 7 foot 2.5 to up to the main level there where it's linked. So it starts at 2 feet above the foundation level. Now let's see if I take this one. It says this one starts, it starts at 0 relative to this one. So it actually starts lower than this one. Now let's take a look in 3D and see what's going on. So I'm just going to go and do a little marquee around here. Now I've got a heavy marquee, so it's going to show the upper part of the building as well, because it's going to show all stories, but only the layers that we've got turned on. So I don't know what layers are turned on. So I'll just say, with the current layers, show just what's in this area, in this marquee. And it says errors occurred during last operation. I don't know why he's getting errors here, but obviously we are seeing what looks like a pretty well fleshed out design. Now here we see we've got a wall at one height. We've got a beam below that. Okay, so this is a wall 0 here. This is the wall 2 feet. All right, so this is the wall that we were looking at, I believe, and we were cutting through at a certain height. Now that I understand this, and let's just rotate it around. At least I know that it's a stepped situation, and that's certainly part of the issue here. And that's why these are different pieces. That's why I guess this is one wall. We can just barely see the handles. This is another wall. You can see here. So a bunch of these little pieces. Now let's look at the document menu, floor plan, cut plane. So the cut plane is something that I can change anytime I want, and it is recorded in a view. And right now it says that it's cutting 4 feet from the current story, and I'm on the foundation story, and it's going to show things. This is sort of a standard thing. Well, let me go and take these walls. So we'll go, see, I want to do all of these walls. I'll just use the marquee tool with the thin marquee, go to the wall tool and say select all the walls that are in that marquee, and we're going to change them to the more common thing of floor plan display. Oh, interesting, we have some that say overhead only. So we've got all sorts of stuff that he's got in here. So 10 of them So yeah, we can see that there are some that are showing overhead. So this is, let me just change this and we'll see what happens. What if I put these all on projected with overhead? You can see how, you know, it's changed a bunch of stuff there. Now, what if I go to the model view, I'm sorry, the floor plan cut plane, and change this, go down to 1 foot above the story? I don't see a change there. What if I go to floor plan cut plane, you know, to 6 feet above the current story? Okay, I'm not seeing any change there. So don't understand this well enough to fix this, but go down to project 00 here. Yeah, not quite sure. It looks like it should, these elements like this should be, this wall is going from 2 feet above the current story up. It should be showing it when we're cutting through it. But what is it made of? That's the other thing, is what is it made of? It is foundation concrete, 8 inches, projected with overhead, and cut surfaces, override them, no. Override cut fill pens, no, okay. Outlines, cut surfaces. Show entire element, home story only. This is on the current story here. So let me just change this temporarily to cut only. You can see that it actually disappeared. The dashed line disappeared. So let me undo that. It looks like it's above the cut plane. Because when I say cut only, it's not seeing it. If I change this to symbolic cut, we have a clean result there. That's what he was doing. We change it to outlines only. We get just a sort of a more solid representation rather than the dashed. So I guess without spending too much more time on this, I'll say that when you have stepped foundations, or you have a split level, you have different things at different levels, there can be some challenges making things, representing things on plan. And one of the standard ways to deal with it is to just say, you know what, instead of trying to do a projection through it, cutting through it and telling me something live, let's just do the symbolic representation. So this is, the question was, is this a bad thing to do? And I'd say, no, it's not a bad thing to do at all. I don't know if this is the best way to do it here. So I don't quite understand why the projected one isn't working. I'd have to think about it, what's going on. But symbolic cut definitely is reasonable. Now, what's the difference between a symbolic cut and a projected cut? Well, if the element is going straight up and down and has a uniform composition, either a simple, just it's made out of concrete, or it's multiple skins, you know, like it's got cladding and framing space and interior drywall, etc. But it's all the same, then it doesn't matter where you're cutting, in a sense, if there's no door or window, and the symbolic cut is going to be identical to a projected cut that goes through the body of the wall. Now, if the wall is shorter, like you have little, you know, a curb or something that's a very low, very, very low partition or something like that, then when you do a cut at 4 feet, you might be seeing the top of the wall below instead of cutting through it. So that may be something you want, or you may want to say, just give me a symbolic cut as if I was cutting through it. On the other hand, it might be above the cut plane. It might be something like, you know, a soffit made with a wall tool, in which case the symbolic cut will not show anything unless you say symbolic cut plus overhead, and then we're going to see some overhead lines. But again, you can force it to be use symbolic cut and just show it as if it was at the same level. Now, where another possible complication is when you have clear story, you have a tall wall and you have some base level windows and doors, and then you have some upper windows or upper glazing. Then with a clear story plan, in order to be able to show two versions of the wall, one at the lower level, one at the higher, you need to use the projected with overhead, or the one of the projected ones for the wall, and then basically have one drawing where the cut plane is at the lower level and another drawing where the cut plane is up above. And each of those can be put on a sheet separately. Here's the floor plan and here's the clear story plan. So that's why symbolic cuts can be useful. In addition, I'm sorry, why projected cuts can be useful. In addition, sometimes walls are tilted or have different compositions going up, complex profiles. And so depending on where you cut it, you'll see different things. And so, of course, there's a balancing act. How do you want your line work to communicate on the plan so that it is understandable but not confusing, not, you know, overly too many lines. So those are some balancing things. All right, so the footings do not show up on the foundation plan. They are on the foundation story and the footing layer. You can see them in the 3D view. Same depth as the main house footings. Okay, so the footings, all right, let's take a look at that. So I'm assuming that he's referring, if we go back to the 3D view. Now I've got this just set for the current story with this marquee. And let me go and say show just what's selected, which would only be that current story. Now I must have had the wall selected. Let me go back here and deselect it. There was just a wall selected. So let me go and say show what's selected in 3D. So now we're seeing the walls, but we're not seeing the footing, because right now my marquee is a thin marquee. It is showing up, it is showing only what's located on the story. If I switch to the marquee tool and make it a thick marquee, and then say show what is inside the marquee in 3D, then of course we get all the upper stuff and we get the footing here. Now the footing, it says that it is on the home story is the -2 foundation, which I thought was what we were on, -2 foundation. So I would think that that would show up because of the marquee. But let's just see, this says home story only, projected here. So let me go and change this from projected in mode hybrid. So there's some interesting things here. So this is a beam, and it's showing, there's some interesting things. This projection mode hybrid I've never seen. It must be introduced into either 23 or 24. Let's just change this though from projected to, let's just say outlines only here. So I've just done it for one of these, and now let me go to the plan. And I don't see where that is. So if someone sees it, let me know. I don't see something like what I just had. This is wider than that. Let me just select these guys, all of these, and we'll change them to outlines only. And let me also change them to say show on all stories. So I just want to force the issue, at least for some of these, to show on all stories. And now we'll go to this here. Now we're seeing them. Okay, so if I select this, it says that the home story is -2 foundation, which is the current here. If I change this to say only show on the current, the home story, will this disappear? Is it somehow thinking that it belongs on another story? No, it is still showing there. And this one likewise, let's just make it home story only. But outlines only does seem to resolve make it visible there. Now, if I have this selected and we go to, instead of outlines only, we go to projected, it disappears. So let's undo that. If I say, excuse me, projected with overhead, it's still visible. Okay, so it's overhead for a particular context, and projected would mean just what what we're seeing, what we cut through, and anything below. Projected with overhead allows us to see something that's above the cut plane. Now, I'm a little puzzled about this cut plane because the cut plane here says it's six feet above the current story. Maybe I was changing it, but let's just make it 3 feet to see if this changes anything. 1 story above, show down to current story. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to have to say that this would require some more study. Clearly, I've identified some display options that can, allow things to be seen, changing from projected to just outlines or projected with overhead did seem to allow these footings to show. Okay, it says often I just draw the 2D line work instead of struggling with the display issues. So I understand that. I'd have to, go into it a little bit more in depth to understand it. And it's, I've been going for 3.5 hours. So in terms of this last question, we'll just call this the last one, except for maybe any follow-up comments. What do you put on the lower story and what do you put on the foundation story? Do just the footings go on the foundation level and the foundation walls go on the lower level? This becomes an issue when working with basement plans and foundation plans. I have some trouble getting all items to display correctly on the 2 different plans. I don't have this example in the model. It's just an issue I've run into before. All right, so to answer this in general, I would say, think about ArchiCAD story structure as a series of levels. And each story is, in general, the contents of the model between one level and another. So we say the ground floor is at a certain height in space, a certain elevation above sea level or above grade or whatever. And then we have the next story up. And so we put the walls that are partitions and the shell of the building and the furniture and fixtures and things like that that are within that volume all go there. Now we have some exceptions. Typically we'll have the slab that supports the first floor or the ground floor also on that ground floor, even though it is below the storyline. And so its home is often the top of the, what do you call it? Its top edge. Its top edge is just touching that story reference line. So that would be an exception. Sometimes you may also have the framing that's supporting it that's below the finished floor, also on that story, as opposed to being on the lower story. But you can technically do things on the lower story because it's in that volume. But your display options will, possibly vary. Now, if we look at lower story and foundation story and things like that, well, we have to think about what drawings we're trying to get out. In other words, when I think of basement plans and foundation plans, so a basement, let's just say in the simple case, it's actually a space that you can step down, go down some stairs, and it's a livable, workable space. Now, if it's just a crawl space, that's different because I wouldn't call it a basement. So a basement, in the simple case, is a whole story in and of itself. So you basically have a story level. It says this is where the walls start, or this is where the floor, top of the floor is, and the walls, are related to that. Now the foundation then would likely be below that, supporting it. Of course, if you have slab on grade, that's, different than if you have stem walls and footings and things like that. But then I would have another story for the foundation compared to the basement. Now you can, in some cases, have, just the basement story and some things that are floating below it, because elements that you place in the model can be anywhere in vertical space, even though they're on a particular story, but you can get some display issues where it's just not showing in your drawing properly. But in general, from the question you have, I would say that we would have a basement plan on a basement story and a foundation plan on a lower story. Now, if I go to my sample project here and go to the first floor plan here. All right, so of course this is, you come up these steps, you walk into the living room here. Now, what is the foundation plan? Well, this is the support for this. So we've got the, stem walls and that support this. Now, what about the basement plan? Well, there really isn't a basement in here. So it's just a variation of the foundation plan. But if we were to have a real basement, then there would be some differences. And you saw even when I double clicked on it, that there are some differences. The foundation plan has some different layers turned on. So for example, this line in space is on a layer called U drawing foundation. So it's annotation that's visible on the foundation drawing and not on something else. If I go to the basement plan, that disappears. And you'll also see that for example, the dimensions for this are on just a regular dimensions layer, and on the foundations plan, they disappear. And what that means is that on the foundation plan layer combination, I'm hiding the regular plan dimensions. So this is considered just like a ceiling plan or a structural plan or other things. It has got some different layers than the standard plan. So this is sort of a hybrid here, not a perfect example, but where we have really, we don't have a basement, but we have two different versions of the subfloor information. So hopefully that gives some insights into that. I would say if you're going to have a full basement, you should have a separate story for the basement and a separate level reference for the foundation. But you can, in some cases, you can have just one story that's, you call it the lower story or the -1 story or just, the basement story. And then the foundation plan can be just a variation of that with certain layers turned on to show what you need. Okay. All right. So Yasik says, didn't the setting for the cutting plane go down to -2 below 0 only? Maybe why the bottom of the step footing didn't show, it was much deeper. All right, well, let's take a quick look at that. Thank you for pointing out at least a possible thing here. So if we go to the document, floor plan cut plane, it's going down to project 0, 0, but not going down below that there. So this is an absolute display limit. Let's just put it down to -5 or something like that. See what happens. That didn't change anything currently on this. Let's go to here, document, floor plan, cut plane. You can also say go down to the current story and go down, -5 below that here. Don't see anything changing there. At least I didn't notice it. But you do want to check to see that the extent that your cut plane is allowing you to see includes as far as you need. So that's always good to check. All right, Kevin Jung says today's webinar is great as it used to be. Need to go. Well, I'm glad I'm getting back into my, just as good as I used to be. So even though I'm older. Thank you. So Pete Wilson, is it on a different layer? Not quite sure what you're referring to, but in general, I was saying show whatever layers are here in 3D. In other words, I had the marquee and I just said show show what is inside this marquee in 3D, and it'll use this layer. So if we're seeing these things, these layers are on. But obviously we looked at different settings. Projected with overhead seemed to be a key part of it. Now, one thing I didn't look at is if we go to the section here, well, that's actually a section 3D. But if we go to the longitudinal section, see what we have. This longitudinal section doesn't seem to have anything in it. Might not be defined properly, or the layers. Layers are all off, but we have, I don't know what we have here. Let's just, I'm going to do something really arbitrary. I'll just cut a section literally on a diagonal through this, like that, and see what we have. Open section in new tab. Okay, so one of the things that will help us is look at the stories. Now this is something that I hadn't noticed, and this is potentially the cause of the issue. You notice that there are two targets here. They're only 4 inches apart, right? That means that if I go into the story settings, that the lower level is -10 and this is -10'4". So basically when we're on the -2 foundation, we've only got a 4-inch sliver that we're looking at. And so this is probably the issue that's causing the confusion, is that really this foundation should be, set to be much lower. I mean, I don't know what this lower level. It looks like it is a full height, 10 feet here. So that would be basement or just a lower story here. Now, I'm going to just do something wild here. I'm going to take this down to -15 here. And so what that'll do is anything that's has a home story of the foundation will float down, let's say -15 feet 4. So because it was 10'4". So it'll float down 5 feet. So we're going to have the project break apart suddenly there. So I'll say, okay. We're going to see this update here in a second. You can see here now it goes down. And these elements that have floated down here, well, certainly this floated down. I'm not sure. Of course, I've messed up the model. I don't quite know what's going on here. But I bet you that that's part of the cause of the issue, is that the story elements were basically, it was constrained to only trying to show a slice of things. Now, if I go to 3D, let's just see, have I messed up the model entirely? Oh, ArchiCAD bailed. Okay, I think that's a good point to finish, but at least I identified by my natural curiosity, saying, well, let me look in a section what's going on, at what would be certainly connected to the issue. And the issue is that the story, the elements aren't within that volume of the story. And so then you have to really carefully look at the element settings to be able to make it work. And that's why the cut plane thing was not working, because we were saying 4 feet above the story, but the story was only 4 inches high. So that's where, and it said only go up to the next story. Of course, the next story was only 4 inches above. So that's where the problem was. So at least I've now got a very clear picture on why the display stuff was so odd. All right. So some thank you from Phil. Always learn something new. Will, thank you very much. Dave, thanks, Eric. You're the best. Appreciate that. All right. Well, we have 45 people who stayed for, you stayed for 3.5 hours. So let me know if you have any final comments or questions, and then we can finish up for today. And then I can go and try to make sure my websites are working, because apparently this problem with my web server is not resolved. All right, so Michael Stetzer, thanks for the great job. Tom Palmer, great job as usual. Ian, thanks, Eric, excellent. Okay, well, I appreciate the pats on the back. I guess it's time for all of us to take a little break. So I think my wife just retrieved our dog. She's probably going out for a walk. I think it's probably something that would feel good too. All right, take care, be well, stay safe, and I'll see you sometime soon.